We're reading today from the Mueller report. This is from section 1, page 14. And they're talking about the Internet Research Agency, which they refer to as the IRA. By the end of the 2016 election, the IRA had the ability to reach millions of U.S. persons through their social media accounts. Multiple IRA-controlled Facebook groups and Instagram accounts had hundreds of thousands of U.S. participants. IRA-controlled Twitter accounts separately had tens of thousands of followers, including multiple U.S. figures who retweeted IRA-created content. In November 2017, a Facebook representative testified that Facebook had identified 470 IRA-controlled Facebook accounts that collectively made 80,000 posts between January 2015 and August 2017. Facebook estimated the IRA reached as many as 126 million persons through its Facebook accounts. In January 2018, Twitter announced that it had identified 3,814 IRA-controlled Twitter accounts and notified approximately 1.4 million people Twitter believed may have been in contact with an IRA-controlled account. Part B, structure of the Internet Research Agency. This is the group out of St. Petersburg, Russia. Redacted. The organization grew quickly. Redacted. The growth of the organization also led to a more detailed organizational structure. Redacted. Social media influence on the 26. Oh, this is a footnote. Excuse me. So that's page 15. Okay, so then we go to page 16. The two individuals headed the IRA's management. Its General Director, Mikhail Bistrov, and its Executive Director, Mikhail Burchik. Redacted. As early as the spring of 2014, the IRA began to hide its funding and activities. Redacted. The IRA's U.S. operations are part of a larger set of interlocking operations known as Project Lachta. Redacted. B. Funding and oversight from Concord and Prigozhin. Prigozhin, of course, is the Russian oligarch who owns the Internet Research Agency, the IRA. Until at least February 18th, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin and two Concord companies funded the IRA. Prigozhin is a wealthy Russian businessman who served as the head of Concord. Prigozhin was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department on December 2016, redacted. Numerous media sources have reported on Prigozhin's ties to Putin, and the two have appeared together in public photos. Redacted, redacted, redacted. That's all of page 17, one sentence that's not redacted. Page 18, redacted, 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 redacted. That's all of page 18. Page 19. IRA employees were aware that Prigozhin was involved in the IRA's U.S. operations. Redacted. In May 2016, IRA employees claiming to be U.S. social activists and administrators of Facebook groups recruited U.S. persons to hold signs, including one in front of the White House that read, "Happy 55th birthday, dear boss," as an homage to Prigozhin, whose 55th birthday was June 1st, 2016. Redacted, redacted. C. The IRA targets U.S. elections. The IRA's U.S. operations sought to influence public opinion through online media and forums. By the spring of 2014, the IRA began to consolidate U.S. operations within a single general department, generally known as the Translator Department. IRA's redacted. IRA subdivided the Translator Department into different responsibilities, ranging from operations on different social media platforms to analytics to graphics and IT. And then all the rest of page 20 is entirely redacted. The entire first half of page 21 is redacted. Then it continues. IRA employees also traveled to the United States on intelligence gathering missions. In June 2014, 4 IRA employees applied to the U.S. Department of State to enter the United States while lying about the purpose of their trip and claiming to be 4 friends who had met at a party. Ultimately, 2 IRA employees, Anna Bogasheva and Alexandra Krylova, received visas and entered the United States on June 4th, 2014. Prior to traveling, Krylova and Bogasheva compiled itineraries and instructions for the trip. And then the rest of the page of 21 is redacted. Page 23 opens with redacted, and then it goes to item number 2, U.S. operations through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Dozens of IRA employees were responsible for operating accounts and personas on different U.S. social media platforms. The IRA referred to employees assigned to operate the social media accounts as, quote, specialists. Starting as early as 2014, the IRA's U.S. operations included social media specialists focused on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. The IRA later...
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Boy, there is so much going on right now. Mitch McConnell, oh, it's all over, right? It's dead. The whole Mueller report, it exonerated the president, and you know, there's a simple reality here, and that simple reality is that Michael Cohen went to prison yesterday because Donald Trump ordered him to pay off women that he had had affairs with, and Michael Cohen did it. He went to prison for that. It's a campaign finance violation. He also went to prison because Donald Trump ordered him to lie about the Trump Tower Moscow deal throughout the campaign, and then to lie to Congress about it after the campaign, after Trump became president. And that's why Michael Cohen went to prison also. And what I don't get is why Donald Trump is not sharing a jail cell with this guy. He went to prison for 3 years for 2 crimes that Donald Trump told him to commit. What am I missing here? Also, cover-up General Bill Barr has said that he redacted information in the Mueller report, and this is a quote from Barr, that would unduly infringe on the personal privacy and reputational interests of peripheral third parties. In other words, he redacted information. I've been reading the Barr report every day on to our podcast, basically, or it's not our podcast, but we've got a special thing on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Thom Hartmann, where a special playlist, I guess it's called, of, every day I'm reading 6 minutes of the Mueller report. And when we're all done, we're going to put it together into one giant kind of book on tape thing. And we're even thinking about rolling out, 1-week versions of it, as podcasts and as videos. But in any case, I've been reading this thing, and I keep coming across all this redacted stuff. And the reason much of it was redacted was because there are people who are not indicted. Basically, all the names that are in there are people who were either indicted or who are innocent and were being told that they were innocent. But people who were not indicted, in order to preserve their, quote, reputational interest and personal privacy, Bill Barr's words, anything that involves them is redacted. Well, Barr's whole thing is that you can't indict a sitting president. So Trump is one of the people who didn't get indicted. Therefore, he's a peripheral third party. He's not a subject or object of the investigation. He's a peripheral third party. And Barr says he's going to redact stuff from the Mueller report in order to, quote, protect the personal privacy and reputational interests of peripheral third parties. That's Donald Trump. He also made it clear that Trump was not the subject of the investigation. And this may be why Trump and Barr are fighting so hard to prevent this unredacted material from getting to the House of Representatives, because the third party that Barr is trying to protect is Donald Trump. And maybe even the rest of the Trump crime family, including Don Jr. and Jared. Although Don Jr. is mentioned at least once that I've seen so far in the report. But Jared, I want to know what are they hiding? What is Trump hiding in his tax returns? Is he hiding the fact that he's not a billionaire and never was? He's just a grifter? That we've got a guy in the White House who claimed to be a billionaire and he's just a grifter? That he's underwater? He has more debt than he has assets. Is that what he's trying to hide? Is he trying to hide crimes that he committed, like the tax frauds that the New York Times has exposed, that allowed him to take over $400 million from his father's estate, largely without paying taxes on it? Tax crimes that he involved his siblings in, so that his sister, who was a federal judge, had to resign her federal judgeship to avoid being investigated? Is that what Trump is trying to hide with his tax returns? What do you think he's trying to hide with his tax returns? Is he trying to hide other crimes? I mean, there's a whole spectrum of them here that he may well be guilty of. Barr has been playing slick with words throughout this whole process to protect Trump. And I think he's still doing it. I think that this is what's absolutely going on. So why won't the media report or even speculate? I mean, last night on one of the shows, I think it was Rachel Maddow's show, her and one of her guests just kind of walked right up to the edge of it, of speculating that Barr was redacting things to protect Trump, but they never said it. It seems to me that this is fairly obvious. So that's the number one that I wanted to talk with you about today. Another topic, by the way, in our second hour today, Ryan Grimm is going to drop by, and we're going to be talking. He's the author of a new book, We Got People: From Jesse Jackson to AOC, The End of Big Money and the Rise of a Movement. And we're going to be talking about with him this whole, Jared Kushner, how his real estate firm. Well, we're going to get into the crimes of Jared Kushner in our second hour. In our third hour, Ben Price is going to be dropping by. He's got a new book out about how wealth rules the world and what we can do about it. And that last part is, fairly important. But the second issue I wanted to bring up is the one that's really kind of leading the news right now in many regards, and that is the trade issue. China is right now manufacturing probably most of what we consume here in the United States. I mean, when was the last time you walked into a store and were able to buy something that wasn't made in China? How did that happen? Right? I spent the month of November 1988 in China. 1986 in China, in Beijing. I was living in Beijing in a dorm with three other guys. They were all physicians. One of them now is a psychiatrist up in New York City. The other two I've lost touch with. They were Japanese docs. And, the four of us shared a dorm because we were studying acupuncture at the Beijing International Acupuncture Institute. And I walked all over Beijing, and, there were no stores. There was nothing retail. It was still a communist government. This was 1986. And in how many years has it been? What, 30 years, 32 years? Am I doing my math right? China has gone from being this backwater little country where the tallest building in Beijing was the 10-story Marriott or Hyatt, whichever it was. It was a Hyatt. Maybe it was a Hilton, whatever. It was one of the chain hotels. That was the biggest building in Beijing. And it had, the only Western restaurant was on the top floor. It was a steakhouse. And they flew the food in. I mean, that was it, right? It was like the roads, many of the streets were dirt. There were giant piles. I was there in November. There were giant piles of coal, little briquettes, the size of a small stone, in front of, about every maybe 100 yards along all the major streets, because there were no cars going up and down the streets. Everybody rode bicycles. And when people needed coal, and everybody heated just one room in their house. I was in some of those houses. They heated just one room in their house with a little coal stove, and they'd go out front and grab a piece of coal, and, that was their heat. And China has gone from that to having the second largest economy in the world. Next year, it'll be the largest economy in the world, and gone from supplying nothing to the United States to supplying everything to the United States. Our military would not function without Chinese goods. Our retail stores, Walmart would have to shut down without Chinese goods. And the American worker knows this, right? Whether they're old enough to remember the days when we actually made things in the United States, or whether they're a young millennial who has no recollection of that and China has always provided everything, they still know that in Grandpa's generation, 40, 50 years ago, we made everything in the United States. And Donald Trump this is going to be his strongest card in the 2020 election. Mark my words. He is going to be saying, I tried to bring jobs home to America, but 40 years of Reaganism, and he's going to call it Clintonism. You know, Bill Clinton signed NAFTA, Bill Clinton got China into the World Trade Organization, all this kind of stuff. 40 years of these policies by both Republicans and Democrats have wiped out American manufacturing and thus wiped out American independence. To the point that, I mean, you know, 5G is the hot new thing. It's going to change the world. And literally, pretty soon you're going to see pretty much all the data in the world going through 5G really, really fast. And there's literally not a single company left in America that can make 5G stuff. And so who's making it? Huawei, which is a Chinese company affiliated with the Chinese military that you know, the Trump administration and frankly the Obama administration before them, they're all freaking out saying, you know, they're putting backdoors in their stuff. They're monitoring everything that's going on. They're using this for social control in China. It's not a democracy, have you noticed? And they could use it for social control here in the United States. But we literally don't have a company in the United States capable of making this stuff. This is a serious problem. And Sherrod Brown and a number of, you know, Bernie Sanders on this program for over a decade talking about, you know, we need a protectionist trade policy, including tariffs. Sherrod Brown saying we need a protectionist trade policy, including tariffs. It was a position that was universally hated by Republicans, and about half of Democrats, the corporate Democrats, said, no, that's crazy. You don't want tariffs. You know, we need an interconnected world. It's a wonderful thing. But about half the Democratic Party has consistently been arguing for tariffs and for a restrictionist and protectionist trade policy. And if Democrats don't start listening to Sherrod Brown on this issue and similar issues, and don't start taking this really seriously, we're going to get creamed in the 2020 election. We have to openly and explicitly repudiate these trade policies that brought us NAFTA and CAFTA and the World Trade Organization and all this stuff, because it's devastating our country. And I'm telling you, you know, I am not exaggerating. All this stuff that Trump is doing, much of it is theater, much of it is not. And he's going to go to the mattresses to fight China, and he's going to, you know, hurt the Dow Jones slightly for a while to take on China, to show what a tough guy he is. And blue-collar workers all across America are going to say, yeah, that's my guy. Democrats, wake the hell up. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So what are your thoughts on all this? Do you think I'm crazy about trade? I should tell you about George Washington. Maybe I will after the break. Stick around. It's 18 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. I will rant about George Washington in just a minute. But anyhow, let's pick up some of your phone calls here. Yeah, we need to get into Trump's taxes, too. We'll pick up that call in just a minute. Jim in Poway, California. Hey, Jim, thanks for watching Free Speech TV.
Tom?
Good.
Listen, a magic word for me is RICO, Racketeering and Criminal Organizations.
Yeah, Racketeering Influenced Criminal Organizations.
Right, and I think that's what Al Capone got nailed on.
No, Al Capone got nailed for tax evasion.
Tax evasion? Okay.
Yeah.
But I think that's the key one. By the way, the thing in Poway was really an eye-opener because the people really came together. I was very proud of them.
You're talking about the mass shooting?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's how, you know, it's been what, a few days, a week? How long?
I don't know. It's hard to forget it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How, you know, I've never actually, you know, had this guy, to the best of my knowledge, had this conversation with somebody who lived in a small community that experienced a mass shooting like this.
Yeah, well, my wife was taking me to work, and it took us about an hour to get half a mile to the office.
Wow.
So it was incredible. But the people really came together. I was very proud of it. Nobody was Jewish or Christian. They were just people looking at a problem.
Right. do you think this is going to last? I mean, are there any efforts to do anything that will sustain the community, or that will?
Well, we have a mayor here was very well outspoken and really kind of said a lot of good things and really kind of brought the people together, and the people really coalesced around each other, and right. I was very proud of being living in Poway.
Yeah, but my question is, is there a memorial? Is there a lesson? I'm not sure exactly what a community should do to make sure that something like that never happens again.
I can tell you that as long ago as it was, you can't drive down that road and not see 50, 60, 100 signs and flowers and memorials. There's a great big banner that's on that very road. It says, "Houston stands with Poway." So somebody from Houston, Texas, bothered to come here and put that big sign up.
Wow.
So it's I think it's a recognition that's probably a very good one.
Right.
So I'm optimistic.
Yeah. What has happened to the shooter, and what's happened to the victims?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Okay.
Yeah, I just know that I was very proud of the community. It's just the people came together, and it had nothing to do with religion.
Yeah. This was, refresh my memory, Jim, Poway was where a synagogue was shot up, right?
That's exactly where it was.
Exactly
where it was.
Yeah.
And in fact, you still drive down there. There's still that big sign from Houston, and there's still thousands of flowers and thousands of notes from people all over the world, putting signs. They came here and put signs up saying that they were we're with you.
Right.
I mean, somebody came from Houston with a 30-foot banner and said, "Houston's with Poway."
Yeah.
I mean, that's impressive.
Is the Jewish community? I'm guessing that they're still very freaked out.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
My biggest concern is not that. My biggest concern, and always will be, is guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
More guns than people.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm not an anti-gun thing. I have relatives that are hunters, and they're very responsible. So.
Yeah, no, I'm not opposed to guns in general. I'm opposed to the proliferation of weapons of war in our cities and our rural areas.
One guy in his house, and he must have had 50 semi-automatic weapons in his bedroom.
Oh, geez, that's not good. Jim, thanks for the call. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Okay, this is from my book, Rebooting the American Dream, 11 Ways to Rebuild Our Country, the book that Bernie Sanders wrote a cover letter for, and we delivered a copy of this book to all other 99 senators back when the book was published. On April 14th, 1789, George Washington was out walking through his field. I was tempted to say he was out standing in his field, but I couldn't bear the pun. Anyhow, George Washington was out walking through the fields at Mount Vernon, his home in Virginia, when Charles Thompson, the Secretary of the Continental Congress, rode up on horseback. Thompson had a letter for Washington from the President pro tem of the new constitutionally created United States Senate, telling Washington that he'd just been elected president and that the inauguration was set for April 30th in the nation's capital, New York City. This created two problems for Washington. The first was saying goodbye to his 82-year-old mother. which the 57-year-old George Washington did that night. She gave him her blessing and told him it was the last time he'd see her alive. She was gravely ill, and indeed she died before he returned from New York. The second problem was finding a suit of clothes made in America. For that, he sent and now the reason for this is because the British East India Company had imposed this law, this rule on the colonies that you couldn't manufacture. There was this whole long list of things that you couldn't manufacture in the United States because they were all things that the British East India Company controlled the business of in the UK. So you could grow cotton, and you could pick cotton, and you could gin cotton, and you could turn cotton into cloth in the United States, but you couldn't turn that cloth into clothing. You had to ship it to the UK. In fact, I'm not even sure you could make cloth. I think you could, but I'm talking about fine clothing, all right? But you could ship it to the UK. There, they would hire people. This was full employment for the United Kingdom, right, in the 1770s, and they would turn it into clothing, and then they would ship that finished clothing back to the United States. So so for that, he sent a courier to his old friend and fellow general from the American Revolutionary War, Henry Knox. And I just explained why cotton, why he couldn't do this. Fortunately for George Washington, an American clothing company, but established on April 28, 1783, in Hartford, Connecticut, by a man named Daniel Hinsdale. And it produced high-quality woolen and cotton clothing, as well as items made from imported silk. And it was to Hinsdale's company that Knox turned, and he helped Washington get the suit for his inauguration. So George Washington was actually inaugurated in a brown Made in America suit. The famous painting, he's wearing British black, but for his actual inauguration, he wanted to be in a Made in America suit. Good luck finding a Made in America suit now. How far we have fallen, right? We've got to fix this. And if Democrats don't do it, Trump's going to win.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And anybody denying this, saying, oh, no, it's all great in the World Trade Organization and NAFTA, it's all just super stuff, we don't have to worry about anybody's competition, that person is crazy. We're reading today from the Mueller report. This is from Section 1, page 14. And they're talking about the Internet Research Agency, which they refer to as the IRA. By the end of the 2016 election, the IRA had the ability to reach millions of U.S. persons through their social media accounts. Multiple IRA-controlled Facebook groups and Instagram accounts had hundreds of thousands of U.S. participants. IRA-controlled Twitter accounts separately had tens of thousands of followers, including multiple U.S. figures who retweeted IRA-created content. In November 2017, a Facebook representative testified that Facebook had identified 470 IRA-controlled Facebook accounts that collectively made 80,000 posts between January 2015 and August 2017. Facebook estimated the IRA reached as many as 126 million persons through its Facebook accounts. In January 2018, Twitter announced that it had identified 3,814 IRA-controlled Twitter accounts and notified approximately 1.4 million people Twitter believed may have been in contact with an IRA-controlled account. Part B, structure of the Internet Research Agency. This is the group out of St. Petersburg, Russia. Redacted. The organization grew quickly. Redacted. The growth of the organization also led to a more detailed organizational structure. Redacted. Social media influence on the 26. Oh, this is a footnote. Excuse me. So that's page 15. Okay, so then we go to page 16. The two individuals headed the IRA's management. Its General Director, Mikhail Bistrov, and its Executive Director, Mikhail Burchik. Redacted. As early as the spring of 2014, the IRA began to hide its funding and activities. Redacted. The IRA's U.S. operations are part of a larger set of interlocking operations known as Project Lachta. Redacted. B. Funding and oversight from Concord and Prigozhin. Prigozhin, of course, is the Russian oligarch who owns the Internet Research Agency, the IRA. Until at least February 18th, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin and two Concord companies funded the IRA. Prigozhin is a wealthy Russian businessman who served as the head of Concord. Prigozhin was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department on December 2016, redacted. Numerous media sources have reported on Prigozhin's ties to Putin, and the two have appeared together in public photos. Redacted, redacted, redacted. That's all of page 17, one sentence that's not redacted. Page 18, redacted, 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 redacted. That's all of page 18. Page 19. IRA employees were aware that Prigozhin was involved in the IRA's U.S. operations. Redacted. In May 2016, IRA employees claiming to be U.S. social activists and administrators of Facebook groups recruited U.S. persons to hold signs, including one in front of the White House that read, "Happy 55th birthday, dear boss," as an homage to Prigozhin, whose 55th birthday was June 1st, 2016. Redacted, redacted. C. The IRA targets U.S. elections. The IRA's U.S. operations sought to influence public opinion through online media and forums. By the spring of 2014, the IRA began to consolidate U.S. operations within a single general department, generally known as the Translator Department. IRA's redacted. IRA subdivided the Translator Department into different responsibilities, ranging from operations on different social media platforms to analytics to graphics and IT. And then all the rest of page 20 is entirely redacted. The entire first half of page 21 is redacted. Then it continues. IRA employees also traveled to the United States on intelligence gathering missions. In June 2014, 4 IRA employees applied to the U.S. Department of State to enter the United States while lying about the purpose of their trip and claiming to be 4 friends who had met at a party. Ultimately, 2 IRA employees, Anna Bogasheva and Alexandra Kurilova, received visas and entered the United States on June 4th, 2014. Prior to traveling, Kurilova and Bogasheva compiled itineraries and instructions for the trip. And then the rest of the page 21 is redacted. Page 23 opens with redacted, and then it goes to item number 2, U.S. operations through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Dozens of IRA employees were responsible for operating accounts and personas on different U.S. social media platforms. The IRA referred to employees assigned to operate the social media accounts as, quote, specialists. Starting as early as 2014, the IRA's U.S. operations included social media specialists focused on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. The IRA later added specialists who operated on Tumblr and Instagram accounts. Initially, the IRA created social media accounts that pretended to be the personal accounts of U.S. persons. By early 2015, the IRA began to create larger social media groups or public social media pages that claimed, falsely, to be affiliated with U.S. political and grassroots organizations. In certain cases, the IRA created accounts that mimicked real U.S. organizations. For example, one IRA-controlled Twitter account, 10GOP, purported to be connected to the Tennessee Republican Party. It's the Mueller report.
Want to connect with the show online?
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. It's 34 minutes past the hour. Sandra Bland. There's a this just came out. As in just like in the last 24 hours. Sandra Bland was actually, it turns out, the young woman, 28-year-old African American from Chicago, who went down to Texas for as I recall, a job interview, and a police officer pulled her over for not signaling a turn. All right, she made a turn, and she didn't turn on her turn signal. Now, there was no traffic, there was no risk, there was no endangerment, but he pulled her over, presumably because she was black. And particularly for you white people out there, I would like you to listen very carefully to this, and just imagine. Think of the traffic stops that you've had. I've been stopped in traffic probably 20 times in my life, and I've gotten maybe 4 or 5 tickets. And, more often than not, you get a warning rather than a ticket. And in every case, the police have treated me with courtesy, and I've never been ordered out of my car. Even when I had long hair and looked like hippy-dippy, and even when on at least one occasion that I remember quite vividly when I was, 19, 20 years old, the car smelled like pot. And still the cops were nice to me. And this was in Michigan, this was in New Hampshire. I don't think I ever got stopped in Vermont. I don't think I've ever been stopped here in Oregon. But anyhow, in a couple of different, and Georgia. I got stopped once in Georgia. Cops were always very nice to me. I'm a white guy. This is what happens, apparently. And again, white people out there, just put yourself in her shoes for a minute. This is what happens when you fail to signal a turn and your skin is darker than mine. When you're black, when you're African American, here it is.
Get out of the car now!
Why am I being apprehended? You trying to give me a ticket for your failure? Why am I being apprehended? You just opened my car door. You just opened my car door. So you threatening to drag me out of my own car.
Get out of the car!
And then you gonna stun me?
I will light you up. Get out!
Wow.
Now!
Wow.
Get out of the car!
Really, for a failure to signal. You doing all of this for a failure to signal?
Get over there.
Right, yeah. Yeah, let's take this to court. Let's do
Go
it.
ahead.
For a failure to signal. Yep, for a failure to signal.
Get off the phone.
On my school.
Get off the phone.
I'm not on the phone. I have a right to record. This is my property. This is my property. Sir?
Put your phone down right now.
There you go. That was the end of it. 3 days later, she was dead. We got a real problem in this country. There's a story in the Washington Post today about a young man who he and some friends of his were playing inside a house with cap guns. Somebody called the police and said, burglars, armed. Cop came by, he said, drop the gun, to this 15-year-old kid who was carrying a cap gun, or a BB gun. He said, drop the gun, and in 6/100ths of a second, right, less than a second from the time he said drop the gun, he fired four bullets. Or he started firing, the firing of the full firing of the 4 bullets took another second or 3. And the kid got hit twice. Now, he didn't die, but, we've got a problem here. This is crazy. Anyhow, I want to pick up some of your calls here. Kyle in Waterman, Illinois. Hey, Kyle, what's on your mind?
Hey, yeah, on the topic of Trump and his taxes, people seem to think that he's maybe lying about his wealth to get more wealth and power, and maybe he is, maybe isn't. I don't know, but I feel the left's been doing that. I even would include you in that for years. They downplay it. They think Trump's upplaying it, but
I don't think he's hiding the fact that he's been claiming he's worth $10 billion when he's only worth $1 billion. I think he's hiding the fact that he's claiming he's worth billions when actually he has a negative net worth. He's actually broke. He's a grifter living a lifestyle off of his cash flow. And I think what he's covering up is the fact that he's actually broke. And that's the only thing that I can think of that explains why he's directing all this Republican money into Trump properties, including, and not just Republican money. You've got now, I think it's 17 countries, or maybe it was 7 countries, whatever it was, that have actually rented space in Trump Tower since Trump became president, presumably to suck up to Trump. And why would he do this? Why would he nakedly violate constitutional law, the Emoluments Clause, and the norms of the presidency? Why would he do that if he wasn't broke?
Same things that goes on all the time. That's why every politician, including Bernie and Hillary, write books when they're about to run. They're making money off of positions.
Now, I guarantee you, Bernie and Hillary wrote books before they ran, not because they wanted to make the money, although Bernie, for the first time in his life, actually made some money on his book. But they write the books. Very few people actually make money writing books. I mean, it's really got to be, fire in a bottle. Or lightning in a bottle, or whatever the word is. They write books because you can't run for president without having a book out there. I mean, that was established by John Kennedy with Profiles in Courage. And pretty much, I'm not sure about Lyndon Johnson, but I think pretty much every candidate for president since then has written a book. It's just what you do.
Well, there's writing a book to run for president, and then there's presidents who then write books, or their wives for that matter. And then that is profiting up the position at that point in time. It's not to run.
Yeah, but I'm not concerned about that. I mean, Donald Trump has written he hasn't written any books. He's had ghostwriters write a few books. But the thing in my mind, and frankly, I think the Democrats need to be hammering this every hour, every day. They need to take a lesson from the Republicans. The Republicans looked at all the things that Obama did and all the things that Hillary Clinton did that might be a little sketchy. And they honed in on one thing, right? 4 Americans died at Benghazi. And now, ironically, a year earlier, the people in Libya had, the U.S. State Department had explicitly asked the Bush administration, or this is a couple of years earlier, had explicitly asked the Bush administration for more money to defend Libya. And the Republicans in Congress voted it down. They denied them, to harden the embassy and this remote station. The Republicans voted it down. So to the extent that, there is any responsibility for somebody dying in Libya and Benghazi, it was the Republicans. But that didn't matter. They don't care. They took one thing and they turned it into 4 years of harassment. Actually, it ended up being 2 things. Then Hillary's emails. Oh, my God, her emails are missing. Nobody mentioning the fact that George W. Bush was using private emails throughout his presidency. Karl Rove was using private emails throughout his presidency. Dick Cheney was using private emails throughout his presidency. 5 million of those emails have now gone missing. And, in fact, went missing when they left the White House, all in absolute screaming, naked violation of the law. Hillary was at least preserving the emails that had anything to do with what she did in the White House. And she turned over a clone, an absolute mirror image of her server, to the FBI before she, quote, bleached her server. I mean, there's no there, but nonetheless, they took these 2 things and they turned them into this giant meme, Kyle, into this, oh my God, look at this. These are the 2 crimes, because people can only handle a couple of pieces of information. We've got like 15 or 20 things that we're all yelling and screaming about Trump about. And I think that the Democrats need to boil it down to a couple of simple themes. Number one, what the hell is he hiding with his taxes, with the Mueller report and all that? Just put it all in the category of what is he hiding? And number 2, the Democrats need to get on board with the economy and trade, because if they don't, they're going to get absolutely trampled. Kyle, thanks for the call. Jason in Tahunga, California. Hey, Jason, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Surprised to be on so quick. Thank you. I just wanted to talk about that Sandra Bland issue.
Yeah.
I'm a white guy. I grew up in the projects, and I have experience with law enforcement that was both like your experience, and then also what I witnessed, being with minority people growing up and being pulled over and stuff. And, I just wanted to mention a joke they used to have. They would always have me sit shotgun. If you don't know what that means, it's the front seat.
Yeah.
And anytime someone would call shotgun, they would always say, oh, no, Jason shouldn't sit in shotgun,
Right, so there's a white guy there for the cops to see.
Yeah, exactly. And a few times we would get pulled over and they would see me in the car. And at first they would be aggressive. And then once they would see me in the car and I would start talking, they would change their whole tone. And then they would let us go. And this happened probably about 10 times growing up in high school.
Wow.
And stuff. And, so this Sandra Bland situation really bothers me because this is one of the cases, like Philando Castle still haunts me. I can't get that out of my head. And, there are other situations because growing up, being the only white guy in the projects pretty much was hard for me. And if it wasn't for these people, I wouldn't have survived.
Yeah.
So I feel a sense of now that I'm an adult to speak out on their behalf and to share my experiences and to try to help stop this,
Yeah. I wonder how many white people have that experience. I mean, Louise and I have 3 kids, and I'm not going to identify which one of our 3 kids this happened to, just, out of respect for their privacy. I typically don't talk about my family on this program, but one of our kids, one time, the police called, and we had to go down and pick that kid up at the police station. One time in the life of these 3 kids. And I know that my kids... I'm guessing anyway. I'm pretty sure that, I know that my kids were, when they were young, smoking when it was illegal. I know that a couple of them tried drugs when it was illegal. I mean, there were things that they could have, and, they could have been bad driving. I mean, there's all kinds of things that they could have done that could have ended them up in jail. But what had happened was this particular one of my 3 kids had a best friend who was black. And they went down to Buckhead, which is a fancy part of Atlanta. And they were walking down the street in Buckhead around 8 o'clock at night, right around twilight. and a cop came up and confronted the black kid, and my kid, who was with this black kid, confronted the cop. And the cop threw them both on the ground and handcuffed them and dragged them off to the police station. And so, you know, Louise and I and the black kid's parents had to both show up at the police station and get a tongue lashing from the cops about being disrespectful and take our kids home. Literally, the only time in any of my children's lives that any of them were arrested was being arrested for being white with a black kid. And
me too, Tom. I've been arrested 2 times in my life, and both times I was with my black friends.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. I mean, you know, this is just crazy, Jason. I mean, this is just crazy, and I'm guessing, you know, half the black people in America, or half the white people in America, are probably unaware of how deep and how pervasive and how real this is, because they just live in these. Go ahead.
Yes, in the sense that they want to trust the police, and I understand that because we have to be able to trust them. And their integrity.
Yeah, but they live in their little white bubbles. Jason, I got to run. Thanks for the call.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
46 minutes past the hour is the Thom Hartmann Program. Viagra for your brain. Just don't tell Limbaugh. He'll want some. And welcome back. Steve in Rochester, New York. Hey, Steve, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Well, you know, Tom, you keep jumping all over the policemen for their use of
I'm not
force.
jumping all over the police. I'm jumping over cops who abuse their power. That's a whole completely different thing, Steve.
No, that isn't true.
Yes, it is true.
No.
Yes.
You just, when you get going about police brutality, you keep going at the bad cops. But there's millions of good cops out there.
Then why don't the good cops get rid of the bad cops? They're cops, for God's sake.
There's a lot of reasons for that.
There is no good reason for that, Steve.
No, wait a minute.
Lawyers get rid of bad lawyers. It's called disbarment. Salespeople get rid of bad salespeople. They give a bad, companies get rid of bad employees. Why can't good cops get rid of bad cops?
Because of a very good reason.
What, are you going to say the police union?
The police unions.
The cops are members of the police unions, Steve. They can change this. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that you've got bad cops out there because so-called good cops are letting them continue to exist.
Oh, Tom, that's so wrong. That is absolutely so wrong.
Yeah.
Out of all the cops I've met, and I used to work with them all the time.
I'm listening, Steve.
Well, the thing is, the good cops, I've worked, I don't know how many times I've worked with good cops.
I have worked with good cops. Steve, I went through the Georgia Police Academy. I'm a graduate. I have a certificate. I had a badge. It's like I know I knew a lot of cops. And most of them were good, honorable people who more or less were just looking for a good job with a decent union, a reasonable pay, and a pension. And some substantial minority of them, were all about, kind of Dudley do-right law and order. But there was also a substantial minority of them who were just total, they just liked kicking people's ass. I mean, they were there because they could be a bully. And I knew those people. I got beat up by one of those people during hand-to-hand combat training at the Georgia Police Academy. And he was delighted that he kicked the crap out of me. And I'm sure that he's kicking the crap out of people in Georgia right now. He was a cop from a small town in Georgia. Steve,
Tom, you just used the word.
What word?
You just used the word that substantially most of the cops are that way. You just used it. You keep jumping on them all the time. You don't do anything about trying to help out the situation. And
how do you help out the situation? Steve, we're looking at at corruption. I mean, this is just naked corruption. When a police force has people in it who are, you know, the cops have gotten reasonably good at finding cops who are stealing things from people or cops who are killing people. But cops who abuse people because of the color of their skin or because of their religion, you know, that is still a serious problem in the United States, Steve. It really and truly is. And if you don't think so, you need to look around. We'll be back. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Newsletter every single day or every single weekday, every day that we do our show. And Sue Nethercutt is the editor of it, and she does such a brilliant job with this thing. It's absolutely free, by the way. It's, you know, all you have to do is go over to thomhartmann.com and just sign up for it. Sign up for the free newsletter. And we don't sell the list or share it or any of that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's just coming to you, and that's it. And every day, as we're doing the show, Sue is listening to the show, and she is finding the websites for all the articles and all the stories and all the topics, broadly speaking, that I'm talking about on radio and on TV. And then she puts the links in there. We call it Sue's Daily Stack, and it's literally a link to every article that I've referenced and every broad topic that I've talked about. I think you'll find it really a valuable asset, particularly to help you win the water cooler wars. So be sure to check it out. It's over at thomhartmann.com. It's free. It's our newsletter. Thanks a lot.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thom Hartmann. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Jeff in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Hey, Jeff, what's on your mind?
How you doing, Tom? I just clicked on your show and I heard the word racism, and we have to do something about this. This is downright ridiculous.
Yeah, we just played the video of Sandra Bland getting dragged out of her car, you know, by a cop with a taser.
I had seen it before. I'll just tell you briefly about an experience I had. I joined the military when I was 17 years old. I was overseas from 1968 to 71. I first went to Germany. I was stationed at Landstuhl Hospital, USA Army Hospital, which was really good duty. But they changed company commanders. And they sent, I don't know why they did this, but they sent a gung-ho infantry light colonel in there who happened to be from Mobile, Alabama. And one of the first things he did was, in the middle of the day, he called me into his office. And I went in and I said, you know, PFC, reports, dropped my salute. And he said, I have a problem with you, boy. And, you know, I'm in the military. I'm thinking, what problem could he have with me? You know, because I really haven't done anything that I know of. He said, because you're hanging out with people of the wrong color. So when he said that, I immediately looked. We didn't have computers or anything in '68, so but there was an AR book of Army regulations, and I said, sir, I will obey your order. In other words, you're asking me to stop hanging out with my counterparts who happen to be black, and you're telling me that you don't want me to do this anymore. I said, yeah, that's right. I said, well, see that book behind you? I said, open it up and find one page in there that tells me I have to obey your order. Oh, you're one of those smart guys, aren't you, or smart boys? I said, I'm just telling you, sir, that I thought the service was integrated. And then, next thing you know, and this was in a newspaper called the Overseas Weekly. I don't think they even publish it anymore in Germany. But there were over 20 of us that were brought up on court-martial charges. Every single one of us were, you know, found to be not guilty.
You were court-martialed for hanging out with black people in the military?
Well, no, there was a riot. There was a riot, and because the tension had built.
Oh, that had to do with race?
Yes.
Wow.
What happened, we had an EM club, and Dino is a friend of mine from Brooklyn, a black guy. We were walking down past the EM Club. Next thing you know, it empties out, and we're in the middle of a fight, which actually started because these two white guys bumped into us, and one called him the N-word and one called me an N-lover, and somebody must have went back inside the EM Club. A guy did get stabbed, but I had at least 20 witnesses that went to the first sergeant commander and said, I did not do it, because the guy that did it told us. So, but anyway, so there I am. I'm innocent. Did I fight some people off of me? Yeah, I did. Because, it's just, this guy comes in and makes it that miserable for all of us, but it was self-defense.
Yeah. And by the way, Jeff, would you agree that this might be a great example of how when there's racism at the top, that racism filters down? I mean, we're looking at a 60 or 70% increase just in the last year in anti-Semitic attacks in New York City, and I think that's because of Donald Trump in the White House. Absolutely.
I've been saying that to my wife now. It's just Jim Crow Esquire now. But I agree, there's good cops out there, but the ones that, like you showed in that video, and 3 days later she's dead, and just shooting black people in the back, between Jim Crow Esquire and that, and a lot of white people don't know this, the most revered terrorist outfits in the United States are white supremacists.
Oh, yeah, the Ku Klux Klan has been a terrorist outfit for 150 years.
Yeah, white nationalists. And, our president stands up there and proudly says he's a white nationalist. And he's at the top. I swear, in my years, and I'm about the same old age as you are, trends follow from the top.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've seen.
Yeah, I think it was Ben Franklin said a fish rots from the head down.
Yeah.
And he was talking about politics. Yep.
And then what happened real quick was, I'll never know, but I only had like 13 months and 10 days left, and I came down in orders to go to Vietnam. And it was an epidemic problem during those years with racism, because when I went over there, it was different. Everybody
fought together. Jeff, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
From UN headquarters
We say fight back!
Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. We're reading today from the Mueller report. This is from Section 1, page 14. And they're talking about the Internet Research Agency, which they refer to as the IRA. By the end of the 2016 election, the IRA had the ability to reach millions of U.S. persons through their social media accounts. Multiple IRA-controlled Facebook groups and Instagram accounts had hundreds of thousands of U.S. participants. IRA-controlled Twitter accounts separately had tens of thousands of followers, including multiple U.S. figures who retweeted IRA-created content. In November 2017, a Facebook representative testified that Facebook had identified 470 IRA-controlled Facebook accounts that collectively made 80,000 posts between January 2015 and August 2017. Facebook estimated the IRA reached as many as 126 million persons through its Facebook accounts. In January 2018, Twitter announced that it had identified 3,814 IRA-controlled Twitter accounts and notified approximately 1.4 million people Twitter believed may have been in contact with an IRA-controlled account. Part B, structure of the Internet Research Agency. This is the group out of St. Petersburg, Russia. Redacted. The organization grew quickly. Redacted. The growth of the organization also led to a more detailed organizational structure. Redacted. Social media influence on the 26. Oh, this is a footnote. Excuse me. So that's page 15. Okay, so then we go to page 16. The two individuals headed the IRA's management. Its General Director, Mikhail Bystrov, and its Executive Director, Mikhail Burchik. Redacted. As early as the spring of 2014, the IRA began to hide its funding and activities. Redacted. The IRA's U.S. operations are part of a larger set of interlocking operations known as Project Lachta. Redacted. B, funding and oversight from Concord and Prigozhin. Prigozhin, of course, is the Russian oligarch who owns the Internet Research Agency, the IRA. Until at least February 18th, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin and two Concord companies funded the IRA. Prigozhin is a wealthy Russian businessman who served as the head of Concord. Prigozhin was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department on December 2016, redacted. Numerous media sources have reported on Prigozhin's ties to Putin, and the two have appeared together in public photos. Redacted, redacted, redacted. That's all of page 17, one sentence that's not redacted. Page 18, redacted, 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 redacted. That's all of page 18. Page 19. IRA employees were aware that Prigozhin was involved in the IRA's U.S. operations. Redacted. In May 2016, IRA employees claiming to be U.S. social activists and administrators of Facebook groups recruited U.S. persons to hold signs, including one in front of the White House that read, "Happy 55th birthday, dear boss," as an homage to Prigozhin, whose 55th birthday was June 1st, 2016. Redacted, redacted. C, the IRA targets U.S. elections. The IRA's U.S. operations sought to influence public opinion through online media and forums. By the spring of 2014, the IRA began to consolidate U.S. operations within a single general department, generally known as the Translator Department. IRA's redacted. IRA subdivided the Translator Department into different responsibilities, ranging from operations on different social media platforms to analytics to graphics and IT. And then all the rest of page 20 is entirely redacted. The entire first half of page 21 is redacted. Then it continues. IRA employees also traveled to the United States on intelligence gathering missions. In June 2014, 4 IRA employees applied to the U.S. Department of State to enter the United States while lying about the purpose of their trip and claiming to be 4 friends who had met at a party. Ultimately, 2 IRA employees, Anna Bogasheva and Alexandra Kurilova, received visas and entered the United States on June 4th, 2014. Prior to traveling, Kurilova and Bogasheva compiled itineraries and instructions for the trip. And then the rest of the page of 21 is redacted. Page 23 opens with redacted, and then it goes to item number 2, U.S. operations through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Dozens of IRA employees were responsible for operating accounts and personas on different U.S. social media platforms. The IRA referred to employees assigned to operate the social media accounts as, quote, specialists. Starting as early as 2014, the IRA's U.S. operations included social media specialists focused on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. The IRA later added specialists who operated on Tumblr and Instagram accounts. Initially, the IRA created social media accounts that pretended to be the personal accounts of U.S. persons. By early 2015, the IRA began to create larger social media groups or public social media pages that claimed, falsely, to be affiliated with U.S. political and grassroots organizations. In certain cases, the IRA created accounts that mimicked real U.S. organizations. For example, one IRA-controlled Twitter account, 10GOP, purported to be connected to the Tennessee Republican Party. It's the Mueller Report.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And holy cow, I lost my one sheet. If anybody has one, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Sean. So, welcome back to the program. Thom Hartmann here with you. And Ryan Grimm, I'm not seeing him on the board.
I'm clicking on it and it's not.
Okay, let me bring it up on Assistant Producer then. Ryan Grimm is going to be with us in just a moment. There he is. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, how you doing, Tom?
Great to have you back with us. Sorry about the delay there. He is the D.C. Bureau Chief at The Intercept, the author of the forthcoming book from Strong Arm Press. We've got people from Jesse Jackson to AOC, the end of big money and the rise of a movement. And this sounds very optimistic, Ryan. Tell me about
it. You know, I always figure you might as well be optimistic. You know, what's the point otherwise? You know, if we wind up in some fascistic climate dystopia, we can deal with that then. You know, take that kind of day to day. What this is doing is looking at kind of where the energy behind Ocasio-Cortez came from, and it's timed just as Democrats are now talking about electability, you know, and who can beat Donald Trump. And as I looked back over the last 30 years of Democratic Party politics, Democratic Party leaders and voters both think of themselves as pundits out there, finding the person who's most electable, who's going to beat the bad Republican, and their judgment is just atrocious. Michael Dukakis is the man that they think the country wants in 1988, rather than Jesse Jackson, who's rallying this huge movement, and on through Hillary Clinton, through John Kerry, and on and on. So what the book looks at is, what if the party had gone the direction of Jesse Jackson in 1988? As you certainly remember, he very nearly stole that nomination.
Oh yeah.
And that's been completely erased to history. But after more than 35 caucuses and primaries, he won this stunning upset in Michigan, and the Democratic Party went into complete panic. Just absolutely collapsed into this fit, saying, how are we going to stop Jesse Jackson? The last thing they could possibly countenance was having Jackson win the nomination. They even came up with the idea of they were going to have Andrew Cuomo go to the convention and kind of fight it out with Jackson on the floor of the convention and snatch the nomination from him that way. He ended up losing a couple of contests at the end of the debate, even though he was well up in the polls. And so it didn't become a problem for them. But his whole idea was, look, let's speak to the base, let's register more voters, let's expand the electorate, and let's cobble together a coalition that can replace the one that we're losing, now that these Reagan Democrats are fleeing the party. Others in the party said, no, let's just enjoy the fact that we control the House of Representatives, use that to raise a bunch of corporate money, and use the corporate money to just kind of fill the holes that are rapidly forming in the dam here. So they went with that, and that's how the ground just fell out from them over the last 30 years. But it really was, it was Jackson's ideas and his coalition that got behind Bernie Sanders in 2016. And then if you don't have Bernie Sanders in 2016, you don't have AOC.
Right, and Bernie, I think he was fairly unique in being one of the more prominent white Democrats to aggressively, and I think he was the first to endorse Jesse Jackson.
And Paul Wellstone were the only, and Paul Wellstone wasn't in the Senate yet. But you're right. It was Paul Wellstone, a random professor from Minnesota, and Bernie Sanders, a mayor from Vermont. Those were the two behind him.
So if we looked at this, comparing the parties, the Democratic Party has gone with the safe candidate, basically, I'd say, since George McGovern, and McGovern, frankly, I mean, that was the election of '72. Ed Muskie was the guy who was really rising in the polls. He was quite progressive. By today's standards, we would say, he was sort of middle of the road. But he was, for that day, I'm not sure that that's true, because this was before Reagan had destroyed the New Deal consensus. And so, McGovern may have been, I'd have to go back and look at his policies. I mean, he might have been a lot closer to somebody like Bernie or Elizabeth Warren. But in any case, the strong candidate was going to be Muskie. And Nixon was scared to death of Muskie, so he sends Chuck Colson off to Maine to blow up Muskie's campaign. And one of the stories is that he slipped him LSD in his coffee, and Muskie ended up on the back of that pickup truck or flatbed truck, crying in the snow about his wife. Whether that story is apocryphal or not, I don't know. But we do know that Chuck Colson was sent there for dirty tricks and that it worked. And then the reaction of the Democratic Party to that ever since then has been, McGovern was openly anti-war. He was, and he was a World War II hero. I mean, it was amazing. He landed as an injured bomber in a little tiny Air Force base or a little tiny airport in Italy that you shouldn't have even been able to land an airplane that size at, and all this kind of stuff. But in any case, he lost the election. So the Democrats have always gone for the careful person. But at the same time, the Republicans, when Reagan was nominated, and I remember 4 or 8 years earlier when Reagan first made his run, and everybody was like, oh, Ronnie Reagan, he was that crazy governor from California who shut down free public education and angered the people of California. He's the guy who wants to start a war. He's but when he became president, the entire Republican Party changed. I mean, they completely sold out to the corporations, and they just decided to go full-out extremist. And every president from Reagan forward has been more and more hard right, to the point that I would say since Reagan, the Republican Party has not represented, the mainstream perspectives of America. The Democratic Party, however, has not gone farther and farther to the left. And just to be clear, going all the way to the left, all the way to where Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are right now, none of those policies are as far as Franklin Roosevelt wanted to go with his second Bill of Rights. None of them. And so we're not talking about communism the way that they talk about it, socialism on MSNBC or CNN. We're talking about FDRism. And the Democratic Party has been scared to death of that since Reagan took it down. So, am I characterizing this accurately, that the Democrats have not been reacting to the times and the Republicans have, in a way? And B, if so, what the hell do we do about this, Ryan Graham?
Yeah, definitely. And the argument I make in the book is that an entire generation of Democrats were kind of scarred by that experience of Ronald Reagan, because they really believed that Democrats were kind of just destined for a permanent majority status. And so they didn't have to actually think about what their platform was, what they were going to deliver to people. And even after 1980, they felt like they had a lock on the House forever. And so they And, to their credit, even after Reagan won in 80, they held the House another 14 years, which is kind of remarkable. And they never expected to lose it even in 94. In October of 94, they didn't expect that they would lose it. But they saw this kind of barbarian, this Hollywood barbarian in the White House, and they decided that the only thing they could do is kind of curl into a fetal position and protect the gains that they had made, or protect some of the gains that they had made. Okay, Reagan is going to rape and pillage in this part of town. We need to come together as a party, and we need to defend Head Start, or whatever particular program they were going to decide that they were going to throw down for. And they've as a result, they've just kind of been in that defensive crouch since then.
They've been picking these little battles while the Republicans have been winning the war. Now, the other variable, though, that nobody ever seems to talk about is the fact that the Republicans, because their whole thing is, cut taxes, and has been since Reagan, and a revisit of Warren Harding's campaign, that the Republicans have all these billionaires and these giant corporations behind them, and number one. And number two, particularly since the George W. Bush presidency, they've been willing to lie about things. I mean, George W. Bush nakedly, openly lied us into a war with Iraq, and he had told his biographer even before he got elected, he told Mickey Herskowitz in 1999, who wrote A Charge to Keep, or wrote the first draft of it, that, if he got elected president, he was going to have a war with Iraq. He wasn't going to make the mistake his daddy did and only have it last 100 days. It was going to be long enough that the war was still going when he's up for re-election, so he'd get re-elected. I mean, this has been a Republican strategy. Reagan had his Grenada War. Bush Sr. had his little Iraq War. George W. had his big Iraq War. This is what Republicans do. I think, frankly, Donald Trump is I thought he was trying to get us into a war with Venezuela last week or earlier this week. It didn't quite work out. And now he's decided, well, what the hell? Let's try Iran. But so you've got a party that's willing to lie, and you've got a party, and that same party is also funded by, to the tune of literally hundreds of millions or billions of dollars over multiple electoral periods by billionaires who are willing to pay for ads that lie. How the hell, forgive my language, and Ryan, we only have a minute until we're going to hit a hard break. How do the Democrats deal with that?
Right. I was talking to a Republican fundraiser once who said, okay, you guys have Tom Steyer. You Democrats have Tom Steyer. You might have George Soros and a few others. He's like, do you have any idea how many vice presidents there are at Koch Industries? And to your point, there's just an endless stream of rich people to fund this party. And so then starting with Jackson and then with Howard Dean in the early 2000s, sort of accidentally for Howard Dean, Democrats decided, well, what if we use people instead? You couldn't raise money online in 88, but by 2003 you finally could. And that's when you start to see this potential to actually challenge big money with tons of small money. And so I tell the story in the book about how it took from 2003 until today for it to really mature because the party was so insistent.
Do you think that this will work? Do you think we can take on billionaires with $20 donations?
Yeah, it's the only choice. Maybe not, but you can't take them on with.
No, as long as Citizens United and the Buckley decision stand, I think you're absolutely right. Ryan Grimm, and the new book is titled "We've Got People: From Jackson to AOC." Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Also, the Twitter handle for Ryan is Ryan Grimm, R-Y-A-N Grimm, and the article, and he writes for TheIntercept.com. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Wow, what an amazing day, huh? Marty in Chicago. Hey, Marty, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's up? Oh, excuse me, Mary. I'm sorry. Hey, Mary.
Yes, me.
You are on the air.
I'm glad, yes. I am glad that what you said earlier in your program about Donald Trump's financial condition.
Right. That I think he's broke.
Yeah. I have thought that way for months. And just the mere ferocity by which he would not release, his tax returns kind of made me suspicious.
Yeah.
From the very beginning.
Yeah, it should have made all of us suspicious.
Going back to his, campaign, and my first instinct is, what is he trying to hide? And I think what the Judiciary Committee needs to do is to zero in on policy and tax, including tax policy and how it has personally, benefited Trump and all his, rich supporters.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we only reached the tip of the iceberg there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm
I think the evidence is, hidden in plain sight. And for whatever reason, a certain sector of the, of the public doesn't want to see it.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right, and it's such a simple meme, by the way. What is he hiding? I mean, if all the Democrats in concert would just start reciting this, every other sentence, every time a Democrat goes on TV, what's Trump hiding? And start causing the American people to ask, what is he hiding? What's going on here? What is he hiding? And I think it's just. It's the meme that we need to have. Mary, thank you for the call. Spot on. Mike in Lomita, California, listening on KPFK. Hey, Mike, what's up?
Hey, Tom. You played that Sandra Bland tape when she was being taken into custody by appeal to a jail from which she
I'm going to play it again in about a minute and a half, too.
Yeah, but the first time I heard that, it included a segment that wasn't in your play, and that was before that, where he says, you change lanes without signaling, and she says, because you're about to run into me.
Right.
And that gave me flashbacks the first time I heard it, because the same thing that happened to me once with a sort of a corrupt little southern town PD sort of a setup where the officer will use the patrol vehicle to force the person they want to check out to make a move. In my case, it was at nighttime, and they couldn't see me or what I was, but they just came up behind me and, hovered about 3 inches behind my back bumper till I, speeded up a little bit to create separation.
And then they busted you for speeding?
They did the same thing over and over, and then they pulled me over for speeding.
Right.
And the guy comes up to the door, and he sees great big news logo on the door, and he all of a sudden acts guilty and says, "Well, you want to sort of watch it."
Ha! Okay. Yeah. See, this is the thing. I mean, these guys are bullies. That's the bottom line. They're just bullies. Mike, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back. Stick around. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
/Tom. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, 24 minutes past the hour. If you just tuned in, We've been talking about a whole variety of things, you know, democratic strategy. We were just talking about that with Ryan Grimm. I was talking about trade in the first hour and how I think that the Democrats are missing a huge opportunity. They should all be on the Sherrod Brown train, and I can use him as the example now that he's no longer a candidate for president of the United States. But there are several other Democratic candidates who are in favor of a protectionist trade policy, of bringing manufacturing back to the United States, of no longer being dependent on China for anything. And which, by the way, was the policy that George Washington pursued that made America, you know, what it was, you know, this great industrial power. And the repudiation of that policy back in the 80s by Reagan and then Bush, and then Clinton, and then, you know, Bush again. The repudiation of these policies is why we are so deeply in the hole, frankly. And it's something that we need to fix. So we've been talking about that. And also, there's a new clip just came out. Sandra Bland, it turned out. She was driving down the street in Texas. She'd gone down. She's from Chicago, young woman, 28 years old. She went down to Texas to check out a job opportunity at a college there. And she's driving down the street, and this cop comes whipping down behind her with his lights on. She pulls over to the side to let him go by. And he pulls her over because she didn't use her turn signal when she pulled over to let him go by. And he comes up to our car, and again, I say to white people listening, imagine this is you being stopped by this cop. Have you ever had an experience like this with the police? I've been stopped by the cops probably a dozen times in my life. Never had anything like this. Here it is.
Get out of the car now!
Why am I being apprehended? You trying to give me a ticket for your failure? Why am I being apprehended? You just opened my car door. You just opened my car door. So you're going to threaten to drag me out of my own car.
Get out of the car!
And then you
I'll light you up. Get out!
Wow.
He pulls out a stun gun now.
Wow.
Get out of the car!
For failure to signal. You're doing all of this for
Get over
She
there!
gets out.
Right, yeah. Yeah, let's take this to court. Let's do it. For a failure to signal. Yep, for a failure to signal. On my school.
Get off the
I'm not on the phone. I have a right to record. This is my property. This is my property. Sir?
Put your phone down right now.
And 3 days later, she's dead. And nothing happens to the cop. And this is America. And what are we going to do about this? I had a guy call earlier and say, oh, but there's lots and lots of great cops. There's lots and lots of good cops. You know, this is not a matter of bad cops. If any police department that tolerates this kind of behavior, you cannot call the police in that police department good cops. If they don't purge their own ranks of this kind of behavior, they are not good cops, period, full stop. We'll be back. It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back. It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour on the Thom Hartmann Program, helping you win the water cooler wars. We're reading today from the Mueller report. This is from Section 1, page 14. And they're talking about the Internet Research Agency, which they refer to as the IRA. By the end of the 2016 election, the IRA had the ability to reach millions of U.S. persons through their social media accounts. Multiple IRA-controlled Facebook groups and Instagram accounts had hundreds of thousands of U.S. participants. IRA-controlled Twitter accounts separately had tens of thousands of followers, including multiple U.S. figures who retweeted IRA-created content. In November 2017, a Facebook representative testified that Facebook had identified 470 IRA-controlled Facebook accounts that collectively made 80,000 posts between January 2015 and August 2017. Facebook estimated the IRA reached as many as 126 million persons through its Facebook accounts. In January 2018, Twitter announced that it had identified 3,814 IRA-controlled Twitter accounts and notified approximately 1.4 million people Twitter believed may have been in contact with an IRA-controlled account. Part B, structure of the Internet Research Agency. This is the group out of St. Petersburg, Russia. Redacted. The organization grew quickly. Redacted. The growth of the organization also led to a more detailed organizational structure, redacted, social media influence on the 26, this is a footnote, excuse me. So that's page 15. Okay, so then we go to page 16. The two individuals headed the IRA's management. Its General Director, Mikhail Bistrov, and its Executive Director, Mikhail Burchik, redacted. As early as the spring of 2014, the IRA began to hide its funding and activities, redacted. The IRA's U.S. operations are part of a larger set of interlocking operations known as Project Lachta, redacted. B, funding and oversight from Concord and Prigozhin. Prigozhin, of course, is the Russian oligarch who owns the Internet Research Agency, the IRA. Until at least February 18th, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin and two Concord companies funded the IRA. Prigozhin is a wealthy Russian businessman who served as the head of Concord. Prigozhin was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department on December 2016, redacted. Numerous media sources have reported on Prigozhin's ties to Putin, and the two have appeared together in public photos. Redacted, redacted, redacted. That's all of page 17, one sentence that's not redacted. Page 18, redacted, 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 redacted. That's all of page 18. Page 19. IRA employees were aware that Prigozhin was involved in the IRA's U.S. operations, redacted. In May 2016, IRA employees claiming to be U.S. social activists and administrators of Facebook groups recruited U.S. persons to hold signs, including one in front of the White House that read, "Happy 55th birthday, dear boss," as an homage to Prigozhin, whose 55th birthday was June 1st, 2016. Redacted, redacted. C, the IRA targets U.S. elections. The IRA's U.S. operations sought to influence public opinion through online media and forums. By the spring of 2014, the IRA began to consolidate U.S. operations within a single general department, generally known as the Translator Department. IRA's redacted. IRA subdivided the Translator Department into different responsibilities, ranging from operations on different social media platforms to analytics to graphics and IT. And then all the rest of page 20 is entirely redacted. The entire first half of page 21 is redacted. Then it continues. IRA employees also traveled to the United States on intelligence gathering missions. In June 2014, 4 IRA employees applied to the U.S. Department of State to enter the United States while lying about the purpose of their trip and claiming to be 4 friends who had met at a party. Ultimately, 2 IRA employees, Anna Bogasheva and Alexandra Kurilova, received visas and entered the United States on June 4th, 2014. Prior to traveling, Kurilova and Bogasheva compiled itineraries and instructions for the trip. And then the rest of the page of 21 is redacted. Page 23 opens with redacted, and then it goes to item number 2, U.S. operations through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Dozens of IRA employees were responsible for operating accounts and personas on different U.S. social media platforms. The IRA referred to employees assigned to operate the social media accounts as, quote, specialists. Starting as early as 2014, the IRA's U.S. operations included social media specialists focused on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. The IRA later added specialists who operated on Tumblr and Instagram accounts. Initially, the IRA created social media accounts that pretended to be the personal accounts of U.S. persons. By early 2015, the IRA began to create larger social media groups or public social media pages that claimed, falsely, to be affiliated with U.S. political and grassroots organizations. In certain cases, the IRA created accounts that mimicked real U.S. organizations. For example, one IRA-controlled Twitter account, 10GOP, purported to be connected to the Tennessee Republican Party. It's the Mueller Report.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Gabe Ortiz is doing just brilliant reporting again over at Daily Kos. The Trump administration has torn apart at least 389 migrant families at the southern border since a federal judge ordered a stop to most family separations last summer. Data received by the ACLU indicates, quote, nearly 1/5 of the newly separated children are younger than 5 years old. They're still doing it. This is obscene. Michelle in Panorama City, California. Hey, Michelle, what's on your mind today?
Well, sorry, I've been sick. I was going to speak about the corruption in the county of L.A. sheriff, but I just wanted to let you know also that L.A. Times on April 14th had a big article about Huawei, the Chinese manufacturer of the phones.
Oh, Huawei, yeah.
Huawei. So, but they had a multi-page article about them and about the 5G, and about that China's going to have possibly 5G infrastructure by 2020, and we're not projected to have it at least until 2025.
Right, exactly.
So, right.
Yeah, we don't even make it here anymore. We've got to buy this stuff from China. I mean, it's like
right.
Most of
and
the.
that's what,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it also shows a chart, like all the European countries and everything, and Japan and all of them are like 6 to 7 years also that they're not going to have 5G. So
yeah,
China's
but at least they
ahead
still have a 5G manufacturer. They've got Nokia, I think it is, up in, who manufactures in both Germany and Finland, Finland, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But go ahead.
But the main reason I called was because we're having an issue here with the LA County Sheriff's Department now. They had we had an election for sheriff last year, and they elected a new sheriff over McDonald. I think it's DeLeon. My brain's foggy from being sick. And he, as soon as he's gotten in, he is rehiring a bunch of sheriff's deputies that have been fired for cause. And there's an oversight committee that is trying to find out and really troubled by him rehiring all these people. Like one guy went through, and it takes a lot to fire them, but one guy the first one was, he was accused of abusive behavior towards his girlfriend, and there's just, he actually has even stopped investigating. He stopped a number of ongoing investigations into sheriffs right now. Into other ones. And what happened is McDonald, the previous sheriff, was cleaning up this after the prior sheriff actually got prosecuted by the feds for things he was doing with the prison system, in the county prison system. So you had a good oversight guy coming in trying to, and there was no problems. You didn't hear about anything. And now this new guy who had all the support of the rank and file is now rehiring all these people who've been fired for cause.
Yeah, this is L.A. County Sheriff?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the sheriffs are it's interesting, and we've had these conversations with Sheriff Mack over the years. They are increasingly becoming their own unique police force, for lack of a better word. I mean, the sheriffs are banding together nationally, and many of them subscribe to Richard Mack's theory that sheriffs are the only constitutional peace officers in the United States, and that they have more authority than some courts and all this other kind of stuff. It's bizarre, and that may well be what's going on. Michelle, thanks for the heads up on that. It's something we all need to be paying attention to. Jerry in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hey, Jerry, thanks for listening to 102.5 FM. What's up?
Yeah, we were talking about the police thing, and I just want to add to that. We all know how important it was to secure our elections and foreign intervention, and that's been covered, but I think it should be pointed out that there's also another important cornerstone to our democracy, a duty that us citizens perform, and it's called jury duty. Would anyone feel comfortable having to sit on a jury and render a verdict under the criteria of beyond a reasonable doubt based on evidence and testimony given by a group of people who apparently feel now that it's okay to shoot first and ask questions later, or by that police officer that pulled that young woman over? And I think the statistics end up bearing this out. If you look at we have 5% of the world's population, yet we have 25% of the world's incarcerated.
Yeah.
There's only two conclusions to draw from that. That either A, as Americans, we are the absolutely worst people in the world, or B, we have a law enforcement justice system that is out of control. A law enforcement justice system that probably poses a greater threat to our principles of justice and democracy than any foreign terrorist out there. This is crazy and insane.
Yeah, I agree. And Jerry, having lived overseas, having lived in Europe, I lived in Germany for a year, and I've traveled extensively all over the world, frankly, but particularly all around Europe. The one huge difference between being a cop in Europe and in any of the developed European countries and the United States is that in Europe they pay their police very, very well. It's a good job with a good pension, and you can live a good, solid middle-class lifestyle. And number one, and number two, they have very, very high standards to become a police officer. You have to actually go to police college, in most of these countries, and it's cops are paid the same essentially as doctors in many European countries, and they're held to a very, very similar high level of standards. The interactions that I had with police in Germany were remarkable for how professional these guys are, how seriously they take what they're doing, and how now Germany has its own unique policing history, shall we say? The corruption of the police by the Nazis and all that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, this is what we need to do. We need to start paying our cops a whole hell of a lot better. We need to increase the standards for policing, and we need to demand accountability of them, and we need to diminish the power of the police unions, frankly. And I never thought I'd say we should diminish the power of a union in my life, but the police unions are in many cases acting more like racketeers than like a union. Jerry, thank you very much for the call. Jim in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Hey, Jim, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thank you for the opportunity.
Sure.
I've lived overseas, in the Caribbean for 15 years, and for the last 30 years, I've traveled quite a bit through Miami, coming from Cayman, coming from Jamaica, coming from Mexico, Panama, Costa Rica, Bahamas. I've been to the Miami airport probably close to 200 times, and I've never had one bag of mine opened by customs. I'm a white male. I just, after, thinking about it, just like how many people of color could go through customs the same way as I did 10 times and not get their bags open once?
Yeah.
It's just an observation.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know, when I'm at the airport and I see the people who get randomly stopped, it doesn't seem all that random. It does seem like they're disproportionately people of color, particularly in airports where the vast majority of the people who are showing up are white people. Jim, spot on. Thank you.
Portland.
Luis in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Luis, what's up?
I was going to say, yeah, I've been to the airport in Portland, Oregon, yes. They know color. I know what you're talking about. I was going to tell them maybe once, not every 10 years, I don't get my bag open.
Yeah. Well, Portland is actually one of the better airports, and the TSA people in Portland seem to be among the most reasonable I've encountered.
Yeah, they are. They've got a few of them that aren't that reasonable, especially now with a lot of people dealing with houselessness who hang out to use the bathrooms and stuff and then leave, but they are told to leave early. So there is a little bit of protest, and it's mostly people of color who get caught with that first.
Yeah.
My comment was about, you should tell the other guy from Midwest, because I'm originally from Des Moines, Iowa, that Joseph Wambaugh wrote about what he called the Wyatt Earp syndrome. And that was his shows, and all those cop shows he had showing police as humans, starting with the Centurion. That was one thing he wrote in a book of his, too. You should tell people to read it. I read it as a young man when I found out who Joseph Wambaugh was.
Did he write The Thin Blue Line?
Tom, I don't know that.
Okay. That's just a guess.
I just know that was his theory, and when I looked it up, he said it's a 24-hour command presence in which they treat their families that way. Now, Tom, this is way back in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, what he's describing is the authoritarian personality. And, of course, the authoritarian personalities would be drawn to things like policing.
Yeah, and he said there are good police who know how to be constructive with that personality, and it doesn't become predominant. They don't take their job home in that way.
Yeah. Well, you see that in particular among the officer corps and the military.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had uncles. Friends' uncles who were like that, and dads who were like that.
Yeah, people who are essentially authoritarians, but they're not crazed authoritarians. I mean, they believe in hierarchy. They believe in, but they also believe in checks and balances.
Mm-hmm. And what's happening is we have and it was on. If you ever watched the Inglewood, California meetings on cable television at that time, the time I was watching you, and several people on things like Paper Tiger TV and Deep Dish. During Rodney King, they had several officers from the Black Policemen's Union, the Women's Union, all of L.A., including 2 or 3 interracial couples who were working for the police department, male or female being a policeman on duty and the other ones working in the office, discussing some of the real scenes that weren't shown on the news, letting us know that there was propaganda going on, and as the policemen, they felt it was their duty to bring that out. And one of them pointed out, and it was an older Irish-American guy married to a black woman who was, she knew her descent. She was from the Caribbean, too, as well. And he talked about how he had been involved in the arrests that were on the news. And he saw the news and said they didn't show who we actually arrested. And he pointed out to the audience that was there in this little community meeting that I arrested people of all, if you want to call it, he said, quote, races, everybody. I arrested college students breaking in into stealing television.
Sure.
I arrested a lot. And then he pointed out that, that most of us with the guard got sent to protect Rodeo Drive and everything there.
Right. Right, and Beverly Hills, and yeah, I get it.
Yes. So we have that still going on, and I was shocked to hear what happened to the young lady. Can you give any details, or should I look?
Oh, it's the Sandra Bland story. Yeah, you can just plug Sandra Bland into any search engine, and it'll pop up. Luis, thanks a lot for the call. It's great to hear from you. We'll be right back. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We're going to check in with Talk Media News in about 4 minutes, find out what's up in the world.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with our news report for the day in just a few moments. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. And welcome back. Dana in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Hey, Dana, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's on your mind today?
Oh, I was going to speak to you about the whole prejudice and racist thing. I happen to be Native American, and I am the whitest Native American you will see. Well, I don't have the blonde hair, blue eyes. My children do, because their dad's Norwegian.
Yeah.
But there are times I worked at the tribe. I did not grow up on the reservation because my grandparents pulled everybody out and said, don't be Indian, because that was a bad thing. And the weirdest stuff happened. Like, I went and taught at a tribal college, and they were like, we're going to shop for a feast. Okay, let's go to Walmart. We were followed like crazy, walked by people, doors are locked. You can hear the click, click, click. And I was like, why? I've literally, with family and friends, witnessed like, oh, my goodness, there's Indians. We want to take a picture. Do you mind, posing? And they'll ask me to step out of the picture because I'm too white. And I'm like, you do realize I'm a card member, and I do that. I mean, really? Yeah, you witness that stuff. And then, I'm in Spring Hill, Tennessee, but I'm from Wisconsin. And so that's where my native stuff comes from. And down here, I noticed so many things. Like, coworkers are like, did you really just loan her money? I was like, yeah, she needs $20 to go to, she's not going to pay you back. Some of these things are so blatant to me.
Are you talking about that, Dana, because you loaned money to a person of color, or because this is just a culture?
Yes, it was a person of color.
Yeah, okay.
And I've had, coworkers go,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, but see, I'm also.
And this is, Dana, what you're describing is social enforcement. I mean, this is how racism gets reinforced and enforced, basically. How white people who might not be inclined to be racist get pushed in that direction by people around them who are.
Yeah, and everybody sees me as white, and they see my kids because their dad is Norwegian. They have blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right.
But I'm like, you guys are also card holders, and they're a quarter Indian. And I've had this happening all through my life. I remember applying for college. My best friend, I grew up in a white school, a bunch of Finnish kids and the whole works on the borders of Lake Superior. And when I went to go fill out the FAFSA form, my best friend, I clicked Native American. She goes, "You're not Native American." And I was like, "Why? Well, what?" And she goes, "Everybody knows your mom's black."
And it's your mom who is Native American?
She's Native American, but she had, short black hair, and she had the perm thing going on back whenever. I'm 53, so that was the perm thing.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Everybody knows you're cool because your mom is black."
Wow.
And that's why you're on the cheerleading squad, because you have rhythm.
Oh, geez. Amazing. Dana, you've had an extraordinary life. Thank you for sharing some stories from it with us. And thank you for watching Free Speech TV. I appreciate the call. We'll be right back. Luke Vargas is going to be with us in just a moment. Stick around. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's up in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do. Ellen Ratner's new book. On the line with us is the chief foreign correspondent for Talk Media News from New York, Luke Vargas, who also does a 2-minute podcast that we carry on our commercial stream, and you can find wherever you find podcasts. Luke, I saw this story. In fact, I printed it out. I haven't had an opportunity to get to it yet. But the CIA has notified, or our federal government has notified Norway, as I recall, that there's a Saudi Arabian who is living there who apparently Mohammed bin Salman or his buddies in Saudi Arabia have targeted for assassination the way that they killed and dismembered Khashoggi. Do I have that right?
The Guardian report, which you're referencing, didn't go quite as far as suggest that there was actually a plan to murder this man, Iyad el-Baghdadi, in place, but it's very possible he was threatened or that some sort of retribution was planned. Let's back up. Iyad el-Baghdadi is a Palestinian-born writer and social media commentator who's been very active on platforms like Twitter. He came to prominence during the Arab Spring, really, and as The Guardian said, became pretty famous for writing these sarcastic takedowns of autocratic leaders, which is precisely the kind of humor folks like Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, don't find very funny. He was arrested and expelled from the United Arab Emirates in 2015, at which point Norway granted him asylum. And ever since then, he's become very prominent of Mohammed bin Salman as he has risen into this role of Crown Prince and sort of de facto leader of Saudi Arabia. Last year, he warned on Twitter that unless Mohammed bin Salman got meaningful repercussions for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, that he would become a more dangerous leader. And the fact that now, as The Guardian reports, several weeks ago, April 25th, the CIA tips off the government of Norway that they sense that this guy's life is at risk, possibly, from a threat emanating from Saudi Arabia. It sort of may confirm that suspicion that this writer had. This is a very interesting use of a policy known as the Intelligence Community Directive 191, which The Guardian summarizes by saying it's basically an internal policy of the CIA and other intelligence agencies that they have a legal duty to inform the possible victims if the agency picks up credible evidence that they are the targets of an impending threat of an intentional killing, serious bodily injury, or kidnapping. And that appears to be what happened here. They tipped off Norway this guy was at risk. Norwegian sort of special forces police go in, they rescue the guy, they put him in a safe location, and they actually sent a team behind that extraction squad to monitor if they thought the Saudi assets in the region had been sort of monitoring this guy and were aware of the fact that he'd been whisked to safety and might have been tailing him. So again, the Guardian stresses here, this does not necessarily mean there was an active plan afoot to kidnap, murder, or dismember this guy or whatever. But the fact that the U.S., at this of all times, when we have gone to such great lengths, I think, to provide political cover for Saudi Arabia, would operate on this internal sort of best practice, I think it's a great one, this intelligence directive, but it's the kind of thing you would have maybe imagined the U.S. under the Trump administration would have made sure to not implement. They've done it here, and it shows perhaps that the Saudi effort to target dissidents is not over, which is.
What do you think the chances are, given that that Kushner and Trump have been squeezing the Saudis and their buddies for literally $1 billion or more in cash for their own personal gain? I mean, the case of Jared Kushner and the whole thing at Qatar and the Saudis leading that barricade, which we're going to be talking about with a guest in the next hour. What do you think the odds are that the CIA going forward, now that Trump knows what they're up to, will not be notifying people who are going to be the victims of MBS?
Well, that's the scary consequence of reporting on this, right? I mean, I don't think this is the kind of story that ought to be killed just because it might, appear on Fox News and anger President Trump and he gives a directive to the CIA. But it gives me comfort here that it appears the chain of command of the intelligence agencies, there is no provision of, this directive that says, you have to do this unless the president tells you can't. Now, maybe there is a risk that leadership of the CIA will, make it known that people's heads will roll if these kind of directives are followed through in the future. But luckily, I think there's some insulation within those intelligence agencies still. The deep state is still strong.
Yeah, well,
even though I don't mean to cast aspersions on them at all.
Yeah, I get that. Meanwhile, the Arctic has melted to the point as a consequence of global warming that it's now possible, or soon will be possible, to run ships right through the middle of it. And everybody's trying to negotiate the terms of all that. And the Trump administration blows this up because they're not willing to acknowledge the phrase global warming in the document. Do I have that right?
Yes. For the first time since the Arctic Council, which was built with this very good notion of cooperation to preserve this pristine wilderness in 1996, this is now the first time that a joint statement of one of their summits has failed to articulate any of their shared principles, namely climate change, which after U.S. pressure issued by Mike Pompeo, who was there, had been entirely stripped out of their joint statement. So this is American leadership on climate.
Well, it's Mike Pompeo. I mean, his career was massively assisted by petro billionaires like the Koch brothers. Of course, they're going to continue to support that. That's insane, but Luke Vargas with Talk Media News. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Reading today from the Mueller report. This is from section 1, page 14. And they're talking about the Internet Research Agency, which they refer to as the IRA. By the end of the 2016 election, the IRA had the ability to reach millions of U.S. persons through their social media accounts. Multiple IRA-controlled Facebook groups and Instagram accounts had hundreds of thousands of U.S. participants. IRA-controlled Twitter accounts separately had tens of thousands of followers, including multiple U.S. figures who retweeted IRA-created content. In November 2017, a Facebook representative testified that Facebook had identified 470 IRA-controlled Facebook accounts that collectively made 80,000 posts between January 2015 and August 2017. Facebook estimated the IRA reached as many as 126 million persons through its Facebook accounts. In January 2018, Twitter announced that it had identified 3,814 IRA-controlled Twitter accounts and notified approximately 1.4 million people Twitter believed may have been in contact with an IRA-controlled account. Part B, structure of the Internet Research Agency. This is the group out of St. Petersburg, Russia. Redacted. The organization grew quickly. Redacted. The growth of the organization also led to a more detailed organizational structure. Redacted. Social media influence on the 26. Oh, this is a footnote. Excuse me. So that's page 15. Okay, so then we go to page 16. The two individuals headed the IRA's management. Its General Director, Mikhail Bistrov, and its Executive Director, Mikhail Burchik. Redacted. As early as the spring of 2014, the IRA began to hide its funding and activities. Redacted. The IRA's U.S. operations are part of a larger set of interlocking operations known as Project Lachta. Redacted. B, funding and oversight from Concord and Prigozhin. Prigozhin, of course, is the Russian oligarch who owns the Internet Research Agency, the IRA. Until at least February 18th, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin and two Concord companies funded the IRA. Prigozhin is a wealthy Russian businessman who served as the head of Concord. Prigozhin was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department on December 2016, redacted. Numerous media sources have reported on Prigozhin's ties to Putin, and the two have appeared together in public photos. Redacted, redacted, redacted. That's all of page 17, one sentence that's not redacted. Page 18, redacted, 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 redacted. That's all of page 18. Page 19. IRA employees were aware that Prigozhin was involved in the IRA's U.S. operations. Redacted. In May 2016, IRA employees claiming to be U.S. social activists and administrators of Facebook groups recruited U.S. persons to hold signs, including one in front of the White House that read, "Happy 55th birthday, dear boss," as an homage to Prigozhin, whose 55th birthday was June 1st, 2016. Redacted, redacted. C, the IRA targets U.S. elections. The IRA's U.S. operations sought to influence public opinion through online media and forums. By the spring of 2014, the IRA began to consolidate U.S. operations within a single general department, generally known as the Translator Department. IRA's redacted. IRA subdivided the Translator Department into different responsibilities, ranging from operations on different social media platforms to analytics to graphics and IT. And then all the rest of page 20 is entirely redacted. The entire first half of page 21 is redacted. Then it continues. IRA employees also traveled to the United States on intelligence gathering missions. In June 2014, 4 IRA employees applied to the U.S. Department of State to enter the United States while lying about the purpose of their trip and claiming to be 4 friends who had met at a party. Ultimately, 2 IRA employees, Anna Bogasheva and Alexandra Krylova, received visas and entered the United States on June 4th, 2014. Prior to traveling, Krylova and Bogasheva compiled itineraries and instructions for the trip. And then the rest of the page of 21 is redacted. Page 23 opens with redacted, and then it goes to item number 2, U.S. operations through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Dozens of IRA employees were responsible for operating accounts and personas on different U.S. social media platforms. The IRA referred to employees assigned to operate the social media accounts as, quote, specialists. Starting as early as 2014, the IRA's U.S. operations included social media specialists focused on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. The IRA later added specialists who operated on Tumblr and Instagram accounts. Initially, the IRA created social media accounts that pretended to be the personal accounts of U.S. persons. By early 2015, the IRA began to create larger social media groups or public social media pages that claimed, falsely, to be affiliated with U.S. political and grassroots organizations. In certain cases, the IRA created accounts that mimicked real U.S. organizations. For example, one IRA-controlled Twitter account, 10GOP, purported to be connected to the Tennessee Republican Party. It's the Mueller report. You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, you know, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, you know, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. One IRA Twitter account, 10GOP, purported to be connected to the Tennessee Republican Party. It's the Mueller report.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our program. We've been talking about police brutality, this new video out about Sandra Bland. We have been talking about Barr's redactions to protect the Trump crime family. In the Mueller report, and we've been talking about trade and how Sherrod Brown has been really the leader on this topic in the Senate, who is not among the people who are not running for president. We have a couple of people running for president who actually are in favor of a protectionist trade policy that would bring jobs back to America. And repudiate basically Reaganism and Clintonism. We'll see where that goes. But right now on the line with us, kind of in a piece of all this, is Ben G. Price. Ben Price is the author of a new book. It's called How Wealth Rules the World, Saving Our Communities and Freedoms from the Dictatorship of Property. Ben, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Tom.
I should add, Ben is also the National Organizing Director for CELDF, the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, CELDF.org. And HowWealthRulesTheWorld.com is the website, and you can tweet Ben at Ben G. Price. Ben, the dictatorship of property. I mean, you open the book in your introduction, the first sentence, the first paragraph. Let's get it out in the open. The United States of America and nations that emulate its governing principles are governed by a dictatorship of property. What do you mean?
Well, I'm not talking about people who own cars and homes. We're talking about really the amassing of property, the amassing of wealth into fewer and fewer hands. But this dictator of property isn't really about the ownership itself. It's not. We certainly have a real problem with the disparity between wealth and poverty, and the disparity between workers and bosses and so forth. But what we're really focusing on in the book here is that we have a system of law that favors and does a lot more than favor, actually sets up a system that allows those who control the greatest amount of wealth to have the greatest amount of governing authority. And this goes back to the Federalists who drafted the U.S. Constitution following their overturning of the Articles of Confederation and turning their backs on really the aspirations that were put forward in the Declaration of Independence by the revolutionaries.
So how does this play out today?
Well, that's the thing that I really wanted to capture in the book was the contrast between what the aspirations of revolutionaries were, what the Federalists, and just to be clear, they were counter-revolutionaries, and of quite a different stripe and opinion than the folks who fought that revolution and who should be rightly called the Founding Fathers rather than the Federalists. But also through the book, contrasting what was put together and how private law was sewn into the public law of our U.S. Constitution to protect private interests and wealth, and how that plays out today in our communities. And I've been working for about 15 years now with communities that have been trying to protect themselves against large corporate projects in the fracking fields of the U.S., the extraction of so-called natural gas. I think it's natural when it's left in the ground, not when they pull it into the open and contribute to the climate crisis that we're experiencing. But the inability of the people in our communities to engage in community self-government and to govern the behavior of people hiding behind the corporate veil with limited liability protections, which means that they're above the law. They're not responsible to the communities that they're doing harm to. And those corporations working hand in hand with our state and federal governments and being protected by our so-called justice system in ways that make it impossible for citizens to enact local laws to protect their rights, to protect their health and safety, and to protect their natural environments from destruction. It plays out in these current battles where our municipal communities are being treated like resource colonies and sacrifice zones. That's the reality of it. It's what I've seen up front and close up and personal. And it's becoming more broadly understood that the system that we're working and laboring under is, it's not broken, it's fixed. It's been fixed, like a crooked game of cards.
As in the fix is in, yeah.
The fix is in. And so the question raised throughout the book and after going through how the system works, it really is about how does the accumulated concentration of property into fewer and fewer hands, how does that translate into a system where that 1% that's been identified by the Occupy movement, the 1% versus the 99%, how is it that small minority actually gets to set policy and gets to forbid the rest of the population from standing in the way of their profit making?
Right. Well, this is what Gillens and Page pointed out in that landmark study a couple of years ago, is that the legislative interests of the top 1% are, have something like a 70% correlation between what they want and what they get. The top 10%, it's like a 60% correlation or something like that, if I'm remembering right. I'm guessing you probably know this much better than me. And for the bottom 90%, there is literally no correlation between what they want and what Congress passed as legislation, the president signed into legislation. They in fact, the phrase that they used was that it was the equivalent of random noise. It is completely, the desires of the bottom 90% are completely ignored by our political system. So short of rewriting our Constitution, which ain't going to happen any day soon, what do we do?
Well, it absolutely, that study illustrates just those things. But what has been needed since then, and it was what I was concerned about, is why is it, not just why, but how does that process work? What are the mechanisms? And is it just corruption? Is it just buying off legislators and judges? And no, the answer is that even if we elect the perfect pal of democracy, put them in their office, and you find that the program that they're allowed to run in terms of governing processes does not allow them to create the outcomes that actually represent the interests of the majority. It's true that we're not going to overturn or change the U.S. Constitution overnight. The one thing that has been happening, and I've been working with communities at the local level for 15 years now, is that they've been enacting local laws that challenge the system, that challenge the claim that rights that are vested in corporate property, the idea that whole corporate personhood thing, we get lost in that. We get lost in what's wrong with Citizens United and so forth. And I'd say that if we overturned Citizens United, we would not have done nearly enough to fix the problems that we face.
No, I get that. I get that totally. But from the point of view of a person who's listening to this interview right now, who's thinking, okay, in the next year and a half as we're running up to this election, I can do something. I can lobby my legislators. I can get my friends to sign petitions. I can, where should they be focusing their attention? Or I can campaign for a particular candidate who's talking about changing the system in ways that are more consonant with what you're talking about, Ben. What is your advice to that person?
Tom, I'm going to say something that may be controversial, and that is that begging the legislators that have enacted the laws that keep us in the box and control is probably not going to get us what we want. That voting your favorite candidate into office may improve things compared to where they are, but it's not going to change the system.
So what should people do then?
No. Well, that's the point I'm getting at. We have to do what the civil rights activists did. We have to confront the obstruction of democracy. We have to do lunch counter sit-ins, if you will, but that's not the model. That's the type of thing.
So what's the model?
We have to bring attention to the fact that we're being deprived of the right of self-determination in places where we live, and that means making local law that is, even if it's preempted by the state or federal government, if it is in protection of the rights of the people and to protect our own home base, our environment.
No, I get that, Ben, and I'm totally supportive of you and the work that CELDF are doing. And CELDF has been, helping communities pass these laws all over the country. But you've never had one that was sustained.
Well, we don't expect any more than under Plessy versus Ferguson that made segregation by race perfectly legal and constitutional, according to the Supreme Court, during years and years. After the Civil War, we thought we had ended slavery, and what we had is apartheid. What could possibly change that? Well, not asking the courts if it would be okay if we ignore what they've said wasn't okay, and that was integration. So we have to turn our backs on the courts. This is controversial.
Although it was the court that overturned Plessy in Brown v. Board.
Well, not until the towns were in an uproar, not until the people had stood up and said, we will not accept this.
Right.
And the courts have been pretty studious about reversing and chipping away at those decisions from the late 50s and early 60s as well, and the Voters' Rights Act and so forth. And so what we didn't get, interestingly, what we didn't get when the courts ruled on those decisions was an absolute constitutional right of the people not to be discriminated against. Right. What we got was decisions that were grounded in the Commerce Clause that said that, businesses that engaged in commerce could not discriminate against.
Yeah. No, I get it, Ben. I'm sorry, we're hitting a hard break here. I can't push this any farther. But a great book, How Wealth Rules the World by Ben Price. Check out celdf.org too, celdf.org, and check out the extraordinary work that they're doing. It is a long, long battle. Ben, thanks a lot for the book and for being on the program.
Thank you, Tom.
Good talking with you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. It's 18 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Gordon, watching Free Speech TV in Calumet, Michigan. Hey, Gordon, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, we're at the northern edge of the planet, a little bit to the west. In regard to driving while black, I attended Cass Tech High School in Detroit back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Played in a symphony band under Harry Beejan. And the horn player next to me was a black kid. And we became friends over time. And he invited me to a birthday party. And it took place in a black neighborhood in a rib shop. So after the meal and so forth, they decided they wanted to go sightseeing in downtown Detroit, and I was the only one with a car. So we piled into the car. There were about 6 of us all together, and I was the only white guy. Driving around downtown Detroit, well, cops pulled us over and came up to the car and asked me if I was all right.
Hi.
So
yeah.
I said, and be naive, and these things weren't a big issue back then, except in the black neighborhood.
Mm.
But so I said I was all right, you know. So we continued driving around, but that was, when I think back, that was the earliest experience in my life. Even though we lived in separate neighborhoods in Detroit at that time, it's still segregated.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
yeah, a remarkable story. A remarkable story. Gordon, thank you for sharing that with us. I appreciate the call. John in Portland. Hey, John, what's up?
Hey, Tom, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, I just wanted to talk to you about the Clackamas County Sheriff here in the Portland area. They came out and said that they are no longer going to be responding to Portland 911 calls. The sheriff cited a professional liability in working with the, what I'm proud to say is critical atmosphere of police here in Portland.
Did this happen? Did this coincide with Portland getting a black female police chief?
Yeah, Chief Outlaw, that's her name. It did, I believe. And, yeah, I mean, that was sort of a, yeah, she's ironically named Outlaw. She's a black female. And it's a big problem here in Portland. I don't know if you're aware or if your listeners are aware, but we definitely have a reputation for street violence.
Yeah.
When we get far-right protesters that sort of come into the city, usually from outside the city. But then, again, I'm proud to say that we have counter-protesters that show up in force in large numbers. But the Portland police were recently cited as, story broke in the Willamette Weekly, that the police were coordinating and communicating with the far-right protesters.
Right, I know.
During a recent row downtown. And these are scary, scary protests, Tom. I'm just curious if you are curious to know your opinions, if we're almost at the brink of a civil war. I mean, it's getting real.
I don't think we're on the brink of a civil war, but I think that conflict in the United States is being promoted aggressively from the White House on down by these hard right white supremacists, these racists, and typically that doesn't end well. John, thanks a lot for the call. We'll be right back. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, ThomHartmann.com. Thank you. These messages.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Sandra in Pensacola, Florida. Hey, Sandra, thanks for listening to SiriusXM. What's up?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I am well. Can you get your mouth a little closer to the microphone, please, Sandra? And what's on your mind?
All right. Is that better?
Well, it still sounds like you're talking to us from the bathroom, but, I can hear you.
Let me take you off speaker.
Thank you. That's always a good idea. So what's up?
Yes. I just was listening to your conversation between your last guest, and you said something about 70% of the one percenters get what they want.
No, they get it 70% of the time. Yeah.
70% of the time. Okay. And the 10 percenters get it 60% of the time?
Yeah, those aren't exact numbers, but it's, you can look up the study.
Right. I just wondered, when does a country enter into an oligarchy?
We're there. We're there. Jimmy Carter on this.
I thought when you said that.
Yeah, on this program 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was, Jimmy Carter came on, and I asked him what he thought about Citizens United. The clip lives on YouTube. You can easily find it. And he said, I said, is the United States still a democracy? What do you think Citizens United means? And he says, well, it means that we're now an oligarchy. We're run by oligarchs, by the rich.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's what I needed to know. I just needed to know whether we were still in a democracy. Yeah. Because it doesn't seem like we are.
I think not. I agree with you, Sandra, and I agree with Jimmy Carter, and we've got to do something about it. And this is going to be this is the big struggle of our time that the media won't discuss, because the media is also owned by these same oligarchs that are controlling our political system. Sandra, thank you for the call. Fred at Bremerton, Washington. Hey, Fred, what's up?
Oh, God, a lot of things. You were talking earlier about the police and how they have this strong union, and their ideology is something to be questioned because of the fact that they always are in harm's way, and so they will have a militaristic bent on things, in my opinion, and they carry guns.
Yeah, except, to use that, I'm in harm's way as an excuse. More roofers died last year than cops.
That's true.
There's police are like number 12, I think, in terms of, the professions where people die. It's actually much more dangerous to be a whole lot of other things. I believe it's more dangerous to be a taxi driver than to be a cop. Fred, thanks for the call. I'm sorry, we're out of time. We'll be right back with more of your calls and the news of the day right after this break. It's coming up on 28 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. We're reading today from the Mueller report. This is from Section 1, page 14. And they're talking about the Internet Research Agency, which they refer to as the IRA. By the end of the 2016 election, the IRA had the ability to reach millions of U.S. persons through their social media accounts. Multiple IRA-controlled Facebook groups and Instagram accounts had hundreds of thousands of U.S. participants. IRA-controlled Twitter accounts separately had tens of thousands of followers, including multiple U.S. figures who retweeted IRA-created content. In November 2017, a Facebook representative testified that Facebook had identified 470 IRA-controlled Facebook accounts that collectively made 80,000 posts between January 2015 and August 2017. Facebook estimated the IRA reached as many as 126 million persons through its Facebook accounts. In January 2018, Twitter announced that it had identified 3,814 IRA-controlled Twitter accounts and notified approximately 1.4 million people Twitter believed may have been in contact with an IRA-controlled account. Part B, structure of the Internet Research Agency. This is the group out of St. Petersburg, Russia. Redacted. The organization grew quickly. Redacted. The growth of the organization also led to a more detailed organizational structure. Redacted. Social media influence on the 26. Oh, this is a footnote. Excuse me. So that's page 15. Okay, so then we go to page 16. The two individuals headed the IRA's management. Its General Director, Mikhail Bistrov, and its Executive Director, Mikhail Burchik. Redacted. As early as the spring of 2014, the IRA began to hide its funding and activities. Redacted. The IRA's U.S. operations are part of a larger set of interlocking operations known as Project Lachta. Redacted. B, funding and oversight from Concord and Prigozhin. Prigozhin, of course, is the Russian oligarch who owns the Internet Research Agency, the IRA. Until at least February 18th, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin and two Concord companies funded the IRA. Prigozhin is a wealthy Russian businessman who served as the head of Concord. Prigozhin was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department on December 2016, redacted. Numerous media sources have reported on Prigozhin's ties to Putin, and the two have appeared together in public photos. Redacted, redacted, redacted. That's all of page 17, one sentence that's not redacted. Page 18, redacted, 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 redacted. That's all of page 18. Page 19. IRA employees were aware that Prigozhin was involved in the IRA's U.S. operations. Redacted. In May 2016, IRA employees claiming to be U.S. social activists and administrators of Facebook groups recruited U.S. persons to hold signs, including one in front of the White House that read, "Happy 55th birthday, dear boss," as an homage to Prigozhin, whose 55th birthday was June 1st, 2016. Redacted, redacted. C, the IRA targets U.S. elections. The IRA's U.S. operations sought to influence public opinion through online media and forums. By the spring of 2014, the IRA began to consolidate U.S. operations within a single general department, generally known as the Translator Department. IRA's redacted. IRA subdivided the Translator Department into different responsibilities, ranging from operations on different social media platforms to analytics to graphics and IT. And then all the rest of page 20 is entirely redacted. The entire first half of page 21 is redacted. Then it continues. IRA employees also traveled to the United States on intelligence gathering missions. In June 2014, 4 IRA employees applied to the U.S. Department of State to enter the United States while lying about the purpose of their trip and claiming to be 4 friends who had met at a party. Ultimately, 2 IRA employees, Anna Bogasheva and Alexandra Krylova, received visas and entered the United States on June 4th, 2014. Prior to traveling, Krylova and Bogasheva compiled itineraries and instructions for the trip. And then the rest of the page of 21 is redacted. Page 23 opens with redacted, and then it goes to item number 2, U.S. operations through IRA-controlled social media accounts. Dozens of IRA employees were responsible for operating accounts and personas on different U.S. social media platforms. The IRA referred to employees assigned to operate the social media accounts as, quote, specialists. Starting as early as 2014, the IRA's U.S. operations included social media specialists focused on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. The IRA later added specialists who operated on Tumblr and Instagram accounts. Initially, the IRA created social media accounts that pretended to be the personal accounts of U.S. persons. By early 2015, the IRA began to create larger social media groups or public social media pages that claimed, falsely, to be affiliated with U.S. political and grassroots organizations. In certain cases, the IRA created accounts that mimicked real U.S. organizations. For example, one IRA-controlled Twitter account, 10GOP, purported to be connected to the Tennessee Republican Party. It's the Mueller report. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, 34 minutes past the hour. Jeff in Asheville, North Carolina. What's on your mind, Jeff?
Hey, the guest you were talking to really reminded me of Marianne Williamson in a lot of ways. And by the way, I would love it if people would donate to make sure she gets into the debate. But
if I can interject here, Jeff, I've known Marianne Williamson for several decades. She is extraordinary. She is one of the most brilliant people I know. She understands politics at a level of depth that, frankly, several politicians I know don't, and or I've known don't. And I think it would be great if she was on the stage. And I'm not sure that she's hit that 65,000 donor level yet. Do you know her website? Is it Marianne for President or?
Marianne2020.com.
Thank you. Marianne2020.com is her website. So back to what you were saying, Jeff.
Well, it was funny how he also reminded me of what Bill Maher said on Friday. He said Oprah would be able to win this because she's a celebrity, she's been on TV, and Donald Trump, same thing. And more to the point, she's unconventional. Donald Trump was strange and unconventional. And that's what Marianne Williamson is. Not to mention the fact that she has this special relationship where she's very vocal about faith, let's just say. So that would appeal to people who are not liberals because all those people are into the Bible and Jesus and going to church.
Yeah.
You got to find someone that's going to appeal to those people, right? And that's why that's not obvious that she would be the one.
Yeah.
That's not a politician. But they love people who aren't politicians. Donald Trump wasn't a politician, right?
Yeah.
How much more simple do you have to make it?
No, I got it. And I would love to see Marianne on the debate stage, and I think she'd make a hell of a president. I realize, speaking of a more or less spiritual candidate, and using the word hell is probably not the most appropriate thing. But I really like Marianne, and both personally and professionally and politically, and I would love to see her in the race in a very real and meaningful way. She has a lot to contribute. Jeff, thanks for the call. Maria in Evanston, Illinois, you wanted to talk about the police, Maria?
Yes, Tom. Hi. I wanted to tell a story. Excuse me, that happened in the summer of 1970 with my brother Ray and I. Mm-hmm. And we're white. And we came to Chicago from the northern suburbs to play baseball and meet up with family and friends. And he and I were going to get hot dogs before the game, bring food. And we were looking for a parking space on a side street. My brother, he was waiting for someone to pull out so we could use the space. And another car pulled up so it blocked the space. So my brother waved to the car to go around, and the car just wouldn't budge. And he kept doing it. And then my brother got pissed off and drove off. Like, oh, God, they blocked us. Mm-hmm. So the next thing we knew, the car was racing and chasing my brother, and then they were flashing their lights. So they were an unmarked cop car. So they stopped us and demanded Ray to get out of the car. And he had long hair. He was about 20, and I was 17. And they started searching him, frisking him. And then one of the cops tried to go into his front little pocket, and Ray said, hey, wait a minute, this isn't cool. And so the guy grabbed him by his shirt collar at the neck and threw him up on top of our car. And I was scared to death. I was like, oh, my God. The Chicago police hated kids, young people that were with long hair.
Oh, especially after the 68 convention.
Yeah, after the 68 convention. So Chicago police always scared me. So then the next thing I knew, they ordered me out of the car. You can tell it's still a big deal, even all these years later. So I was shaking, and then they wanted to search the car. They demanded to search the car and open the trunk. And in the trunk was my purse and jacket. And unbeknownst to me, being a teenager, I had roaches in my purse and in my jacket pocket.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So then the next thing I knew, we were going down to the police station, and then they decided they were going to strip search me. And that's what happened. It was a horrible experience by two female cops in a bathroom, and I kept screaming and protesting that I didn't want this done to me. And I was so naive. I'd hid it in my underwear, so I was struggling to keep my underwear on. It was quite traumatic.
Yeah.
And so then the oldest brother, Bill, we didn't have cell phones then, but somehow we'd gotten back to the apartment that we were arrested. Ray's phone call, and he came down to the police station there, and he overheard, because they didn't find the pot on Ray, and Ray was I was the minor.
Right.
They wanted to pin it on him.
Right.
So my oldest brother heard one of the arresting officers. They were deliberating, what are they going to do? And so one of the other cops in the office said, well, say you saw him pass it to her in the car. And so that's what they did, and it was a total lie. And Ray had given me the pot on the outer drive while we were driving the Jamaican Ganj.
Sure.
A lid of it on the outer drive, and I put it in my pants then.
So how did this end up, Maria?
It ended up Ray was charged with a misdemeanor for pot for a 3-year probation.
Uh-huh.
And we went to court, and the court was a total fiasco.
Right.
The cops lied on the stand.
Yep.
And then I got on the stand and told the absolute truth, the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ray got on the stand and told his absolute truth. And at the end, Ray was charged, and the judge said to me directly that I was totally unbelievable.
Amazing.
My story.
Yeah. I lived through those days. I've got a collection of my own stories, but that's sort of the bad news. The good news, Maria, is that had you been black and talked back to a cop that, you would be dead now.
Right.
And if Ray had been black, he would be in prison for a long time, and maybe even still to this day. And in fact, well, anyhow, Maria, thank you for sharing your story with us. Simon in Matawan, New Jersey, you wanted to get back to our conversation about trade?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call.
Certainly.
Well, I told you about 2 months ago, and, basically to go over with you how, free trade is a complete lie. And, I'm pretty sure I can prove it to you beyond any doubt.
Okay, go for it.
Now, Tom, I can't do it now because for all kinds of reasons. I know this is unusual, but will you contact me?
No, I won't, Simon. I don't do that. Carrie in New Windsor, New York. Hey, Carrie, what's on your mind today?
Hi. So last year, this is about police brutality. I saw on Democracy Now! A report of a Sheriff Donnie Youngblood in Kern County Sheriff's Department, right? They had the detectives organization, the detention organization. I have the article right here in front of me that proves that it's cheaper for officers to kill people rather than wound them, flesh wound. So,
because the wound produces a litigant, whereas with death you don't have somebody to litigate against you.
Yeah, $3 million and the family goes away. He literally was caught on tape saying that, and there's a video of it.
Right.
It was a training. He was addressing people at a deputy training, and the reason why let's see, what is the name of the detention people who released this video? Kern County Detention Officers Association released this video because there was another sheriff running in the 2018 election, and so they did it to be, damaging to Donnie Youngblood, Sheriff Donnie Youngblood, to try to make him lose the election. And so he, proposed a hypothetical question to the trainees, and anybody can find this on CNN and Democracy Now! From April of last year. He says, which way do you think it's better financially, cripple them or kill them for the county? Someone answers, kill them. And Officer Youngblood responds, absolutely, because if you cripple them, you got to take care of them for life, and that cost goes way up.
Amazing, amazing. Carrie, thank you for sharing that. I mean, these conversations are actually real. This is amazing. Byron in Joplin, Missouri, you wanted to get back to money in politics?
I'm thinking about back around 1940, wasn't there a senator from Minnesota who was getting money from the German government, which was a Nazi government? I think this was over the Land Lease or something. And he's passing out money, and for some reason he got on the plane back to the FBI started after him. And anyways, just another
Yeah,
case.
I don't know about that, Byron, but there was a senator from Connecticut who was getting big money from the Nazis, and through Brown Brothers Harriman, which was the company that he was the director of, and Franklin Roosevelt shut it down. And his name was Prescott Bush. He was George Herbert Walker Bush's father.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. Well, anyway, the FBI got onto this guy, and the plane got hit by lightning over West Virginia. But this was around 1940.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with that particular story there, Byron, but it sounds like a good one. Thanks for the call. Leo in Palm Harbor, Florida. Hey, Leo, what's on your mind? Leo, you are on the air.
Can you hear me?
Just fine. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, a while ago you had a fellow, Steve, on that told you that you were lying about what you mentioned about bad cops.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in Chicago over 40 years ago, and I worked in a predominantly black neighborhood. And what the other white cops did to you, if you happen to treat the locals nicely, they would shun you.
Yeah.
They wouldn't show up if you had an emergency, and that happened a few times. Not a very good feeling. When I was in the police academy, one of the things they drilled into everybody's head was that if you didn't acquire brutality beefs, which were abusing the public, you weren't out there doing your job, which I found to be totally.
So complaints of police brutality against individual police officers are a badge of honor among cops in Florida?
They were then, and I don't know how it is now.
Yeah.
But things don't seem to have changed all that much from what I'm hearing. The fellow Steve sounded like an ex-police officer.
Yeah. Well, my point, I know that there are good cops out there. I think that any police department that allows bad cops to continue being cops, the other cops in that police department, the other police officers cannot call themselves good cops. You just can't. Not if you allow this to happen. Leo, thanks for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
More of your calls in the news of the day right after this. Stick around. It's coming up on 47 minutes past the hour. And welcome back. Carolyn in Gustine, California, or Gustin? How do you say it?
Yeah, it's Gustine.
Gustine. Okay. What's up, Carolyn?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a new listener of yours, and today's conversation is really impacting me dramatically because I'm a multiracial growing up, lived overseas because my dad was in the Navy for probably like the beginning of my life, and moved back into the United States. And the one thing you notice when you come back to the country is the separation between the people, the fact that there doesn't really seem to be any unity. And when the way that Democrats and everything are running their campaigns, they're not showing any kind of a vision. And, just as an example, when I was in my 20s, there was a veterans parade. And I was with my mom, and my dad had just gone to get a drink or something like that. And when an older man, he was an ex-soldier, walked by my mom, he just turned around and started screaming at her. And she's the person that killed, his family and the other family members, and she should die. And he turned around and looked at me and said, "You should have never been born."
Holy cow. That's terrible.
The conversation really hit hard.
Yeah. What was your mom's ethnicity?
She's Japanese.
Ah, wow. So this was an echo of World War II. It's so sad how endemic or epidemic this becomes. My dad used to refer to people of Japanese ancestry, with that, with a three-letter slur, and because he served in Japan for 2 years and came back essentially, anti-Japanese. I don't know how to say it, and it came across as fairly racist. And I think that. Well, I don't know. I mean, my dad is not somebody I ever thought of as a racist, but, I know that he had that thing about the Japanese. It's just, and it was because we fought this war. And we saw this during the Vietnam War. There was, all these slurs that were used to describe Vietnamese. And people came back from that war using those kind of slurs. And now in Afghanistan and Iraq, you've got, phrases like, raghead and stuff like that are being used. It's almost like we have to turn the entire country into a bunch of screaming racists before we can justify killing people, particularly innocent people, the victims of war typically, in a foreign land. And usually the wars that the United States fights are not against Caucasians. Germany was the wild exception. Carolyn, your thoughts on my rant?
No, actually, I completely agree with you, and I think this is the problem that we have with the politics of today. We're going into 2020. We've got somebody, not just somebody, we've got a bunch of people in the entire upper echelons of government, business, pretty much every leading area that is allowed to broadcast their thoughts, and nobody else from the so-called 99% can make the conversation heard. And I think there just needs to be a way that the Democrats have to get over trying to do these little 1 minute, 30-second sound bites or whichever it is. They really need to put together a vision that people around the country can hold on to and to get over this racism, because we've got to figure it out.
I agree. Racism is poison, Carolyn. It's poison not just for the culture and the society, but for the individuals who carry it, and obviously, for the people they inflict it on. I'm sorry?
Oh, just like I heard somebody say before that, when you go up into outer space and you look down, all the borders disappear. And
there you go. Carolyn, thank you. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Oh, welcome back. Patricia in Vashon, Washington. Hey, Patricia, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. What's up?
Well, I just want to say something. You had a person on that was talking about people should be doing more civil disobedience and protesting, and I think Representative Procan has gone through that too. And I've been arrested a lot, somewhere between 65 and 100 times, which has been proven in a courtroom. And I just want to say that I don't think people should be, especially representatives and important people, should be saying that people should be doing civil disobedience. This is an individual decision to make, and there's a lot of really threatening things that happen that can affect your life.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right. You've been arrested many times doing civil disobedience? Is that what you're talking about, Patricia?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Forgive my interrupting you. You were going someplace with that thought.
Yeah. So, I mean, things can happen from the police while you're being arrested. Things can happen in jail. When you get out, you may not be able to get a job, depending upon where you live. You may not be able to get housing or have a hard time getting housing. Yeah. You have been given no financial help or promise of the group that you're with, that, you know, there will be a place to live and some kind of work to do. So, you know, this is a real serious decision, and it shouldn't be taken lightly.
Yes, I agree. I absolutely agree. Patricia, thank you. You're spot on. Katie in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Hey, Katie, what's up?
Hey, Tom, I watch your show every day.
Thank you.
I wanted to make a comment that I watched Rachel Maddow program last night on MSNBC, and she said that the Judicial Committee could actually obtain the redacted material without going through the AG. If they could actually subpoena this material themselves.
Well, they could request of the judge who supervised the grand jury permission to release it. Yes, the judge may or may not grant that permission, but they have the right to ask for it, at least according to Bill Barr. Because when Barr said, I'm not going to let it out, he said, you know, if Jerry Nadler wants it, he can ask for it.
I wondered why they haven't done that.
Well, I'm guessing, particularly, I saw the same segment you did last night. I'm guessing pretty soon they will, Katie. And
I hope so.
Yeah, exactly, and let's hope so. Katie, thanks for the call.
They're going to get it any other way.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe the Chinese will hack it. China, if you're listening, I'm sure the media would, etc. Katie, thanks for the call. James in Minneapolis, listening on AM 950. Hey, James, what's up? James?
Show regular. Yes?
Yeah, you're on the air. I'm sorry. What's up?
Hi. I listen to your show regularly as well.
Thank you.
This is in response to your guest on the show.
Ben Price?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what we can do to help fix Citizens United one state at a time. It was a speaker, Ray Metcalf, on a Ralph Nader show a while back. He's a two-term Alaska state senator who came up with legislation based on the Supreme Court overturning basically what we can do in each of our states. There's 23 states that can create legislation to basically try and overturn Citizens United.
Are you talking by constitutional amendment?
That's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the principal struggle right now. MoveToAmend.org and Citizen.org. There's a bunch of groups that have been proposing explicit, specific constitutional amendments to say corporations are not people and money is not speech. And God bless them, because we need it. James, I got to run. I'm sorry, it's the end of the show. But thanks so much for the call, and thanks for listening to AM 950. We'll be back. No, we won't be back. We'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. And Sean stops coughing. Yeah. Oh, my. Anyhow, thanks so much for being with us today. It's another fascinating day. We'll be back tomorrow as the freak show in Washington, D.C. rolls on, and we all try to figure out exactly what we can do about it. And there's a lot we can do about it. So anyhow, to get out there, get active, tag you're it. Democracy is not a spectator sport. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.